Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description. Once again by Double M7. Lady Toki grants Luffy one last chance to correct his mistakes. Luffy was sent 12 years into the past in order to relive his life. Though there was a catch, he retains his 19-year-old mind and body. How will he change the world? For the better. Adios.
Day 8 Wano, Flower Capital Plaza Straw Hat Headquarters. Where it ended was where we began, with the forces of the Straw Hats facing off against the combined forces of Orochi's samurai along with the Beast Pirates. It was a dance in the Flower Capital, a dance of death. Neither side was falling behind as the Wano Samurais outnumbered the Straw Hat Grand Armada, Mink, Kazuki Alliance. The battle was endless, with momentary breaks in between. Oven worked tirelessly along with Law to provide nourishment and proper rest for their fighters. Countless members of the Straw Hats were out in the field, but many are also resting to fight another day. As far as what was happening on the enemy's side, who cares, they were the enemy pirates after all. How long has it been? Could be days, maybe even a week. How long has it been since this war began? Yahaha. Excellent work, Oven. With this we shall have enough supply until the grand finale. Enel saw through the arrival of their food supply and medical supply. No way was their route going to be broken with the guardianship of Enel. Good work to Enel, without you. Our supplies could have not arrived on time, but will this really be the last supply run? Oven asked Enel. Guild approached the duo with a massive calculator. Finally, I was pulling berries from multiple accounts to fund this war. Good thing it's coming to an end soon. Yes, brother Guild. As the dawn of time has arrived. The Grand Armada is coming out on top on this 8th day. Straw Hat Grand Armada Queen Boa Hancock versus Beast Pirate Flying 6 Who's Who. I only care for strength. Who's Who was a strong individual. But it did not take long for Hancock to clearly outmatch that strongest of the Flying Six. For Hancock had Who's Who on his knees, and this was without needing her devil fruit ability. It is clear that I am severely outmatched here, so I forfeit. Be on your way then, creature, for I do not turn my back on my enemies. She looked down on him so much that she was arched all the way back. She pointed at Who's Who as if to banish him from existence. The ever so opportunistic creature knew his place and so transformed into his ancient zone form, Ornamegalonyx, and the creature was big enough to carry his entire crew on his back. See you again, for this is not the last time our paths will cross. Who's Who and everyone in his crew knew that Boa Hancock exuded the aura of an emperor, a through fearsome creature. And if that was the queen of the king, then Kaido, who he believed to be the supreme being of this world, was in for a rude awakening. With the departure of the giant owl, Hancock took a heavy sigh, disappointed that she had not found a worthy opponent yet. For all her training with the Straw Hat Grand Armada's finest, and even her own dearly beloved, has sharpened her to be one of the most fearsome warriors of the group. Straw Hat Grand Armada Cuisine Division Sanji vs Beast Pirate Flying 6 Sasaki. Do you know the best way to serve sharks? Sanji had been dodging Sasaki's attack with ease, hopping off walls, jumping from building to building, and overall using his superior physical abilities to outperform the Flying Six member. You fucking bastard. I'll kill you. The duo had found themselves mid-air, with Sanji having the outstanding advantage. Sasaki was crawling back to gain the upper hand, but the distance between them was growing and growing. As the old man would say it, with soup, Sanji's inflamed limbs were the end of Sasaki as Sanji was able to connect on his abdomen, causing blood to splutter all over the place. The Flying Six member was no match for a pained and angry Sanji. For our beloved chef continued to grieve at the loss of his mentor, and Sasaki just happened to be on the receiving end of his pent-up emotions. Even without the added emotional stakes, Sanji would have won easily. It just so happened that the unlucky Flying Six member met his match at the hands of the cook. As Sasaki collided with the ground, he was met with a violent thud, and Sanji gracefully fell right beside his motionless body. He immediately went for a cigar, putting it in his mouth and lighting it. Despite looking weak for that moment, Sanji let the tears flow as he remembered Zeph. Thank you for everything, old man. and Sanji grasped his face in agony as the tears would not stop. "Thank you." Straw Hat Grand Armada Sea Division Jinbei vs Beast Pirate Flying 6 page 1. He stood firm on both feet, both arms outstretched as pain continued to seep through his entire body. Yet he did not fall as his pride would not allow him so. His goal was always to be strong, and now he met another wall. This world was huge. Maybe he could get stronger, but in a different life. "I respect your will, but you are severely outmatched." Jinbei stood with his back turned on the barely alive page 1. His hands outstretched as he delivered a devastating blow. "In a different time you could have been a powerful friend. Maybe, just maybe. I'm up to the captain to decide, but for now rest easy page 1, for you have been defeated." With those words, his legs finally gave in. Page 1 fell flat on his face. Jinbei had beaten page 1 after an intense endurance battle. Straw Hat Grand Armada Queen, Infiltration Division Reiju vs Beast Pirate Flying 6 Ulti. "I said get off me bitch." Ulti struggled as Reiju sat on top of Ulti, for she had tied her down with sea prism ropes. Courtesy of the Weapon Division, of course. "Why should I, little girl?" Of course. This made her angrier as she began to violently rock. "I am not a little girl, you old hag," retorted Ulti. Her behavior could be explained through her powerful stature and lack of guidance growing up. Her and her brother were monsters of the New World until they met the wall that is Kaido. They were not challenged since. That was until she faced Reiju that day, losing in such a quick manner. Funny enough, the poison butterfly did not drown in the water. She was not a fruit user then. What the hell was she? "I'm definitely not letting you go now, stupid." Despite the struggling Ulti under her buttocks, Reiju was not moving an inch as she contemplated on what to do with the member of the Flying Six. Straw Hat Grand Armada Queen, Financial Division Nami vs Beast Pirate Flying 6 Black Maria. She continued to fly around the Queen of Spiders, zapping and burning the hell spawns of the giant spider creature. Black Maria was a pain in her sides, but with her newfound ability, one that once belonged to the former Emperor of the Sea, there was no fear from her side. Nami zoomed past the head of the scary creature, holding Prometheus on one hand, and unleashing a stream of soul-fueled flamethrowers. "Ah!" Her voice screeched painfully throughout the air, as the flames were enough to bother Black Maria, but it wasn't a deciding factor on the match. "This is all you got, girl?" She pointed her giant spinner in the air and unleashed a rain of sticky spider webs. No problem for Nami as she placed Prometheus on her head and let the flaming ball of fire expand in a giant fireball, burning every string that even attempts to bind Nami. Zeus continued to fly around gleefully dodging any and all hell spawns from the back of Arachne. "Nami, look!" Zeus had spotted an opening, bringing it to the attention of his creator. Nami took notice and shifted her gaze to the opening, the back of Black Maria, where her multiple eyes would not expect an attack. It was Arachne's blind spot, and remembering her experience from Whole Cake Island, Nami decided to use one of Big Mom's ultimate moves. The one where she went high into the sky, then suddenly crashing down with the back burner of Prometheus, and Zeus as her base. The meteoric downfall was unexpected, as her speed was incomprehensible for the mythical zone user. Nami crashed directly in the back of Black Maria. The impact could be heard for miles. The new wielder of the Soul Fruit had single-handedly annihilated Black Maria. "Yay, we won!" exclaimed Zeus and Prometheus as they danced around one another, letting worry. From the strong-minded little girl from Kokoyashi village, to now one of the strongest within a Grand Armada. How times have changed. Straw Hat Grand Armada Vanguard Division Sir Crocodile vs Beast Pirate All-Star, Jack, the Drought. Crocodile held a withered body of the beast, Jack. He held him with his non-hook hand by his neck. Tisk. This is the extent of the so-called beast pirates? The beast was a perfect punching bag, receiving his sand saber with ease, and his sand tornado without a problem. But what the creature lacked was the intelligence of the former warlord. For Crocodile was crafty, and he timed it so that the beast was worn out from his barrage, and he drained him from all his fluid. Now Jack was mummified, barely alive from getting dried of his fluids. Crocodile then tossed him to the side like a ragged doll. Jack the Drought was ironically dried by the sand user. There was no doubt at all. Go figure. Straw Hat Grand Armada Medical Division Commander Marco, the Phoenix, vs. Beast Pirate All-Star, Queen, the Plague. Marco stood above the Queen, with the beast seething in tremendous pain. It had been 8 days since the start of their battle, with Marco timing his attacks perfectly to wither down the creature. Eventually Queen's strikes were getting weaker and weaker by the day. Then finally, Marco pulled out a powerful strike, one that Queen could not defend on time. And that would be it for the creature. This is not the limit of Kaido's beast, is it, Yoi? Yet the beast was struggling to get up. The barrage of the Phoenix was too much, even for the awakened ancient zone. But to make matters worse for the Queen, a female monster literally shot from the sky and landed on his stomach, causing him to pass out in tremendous pain. Marco looked at the new arrival curiously, gauging whether she was an enemy or an ally. "I am Yamato, the daughter of Kaido. I wish to meet Straw Hat Luffy." Instead she announced herself, like the alpha female that she was. Oh, Marco leaned against his legs and observed the new arrival. She did deliver a devastating blow to Queen. Maybe she was alright. "You will have to wait. He is busy with your father." "Sure." With that, Yamayo sat in front of the Phoenix commander. "I'll wait." She sat with her right leg up as she curved her left leg inward. Her pose was very strong, and yet she was defiant. What a strange person this Yamato was. Straw Hat Grand Armada Sword Division Commander Dracule, Hawkeye, Mihawk vs. Beast Pirate All-Star, King, the Conflagration. Who would have thought a duel would erupt between Dracule Mihawk and King of the Beast Pirates? The Titans, who could compete with the best of them, were causing craters to form as Yuru met the blade of Cain. "For the world's supposed strongest, you disappoint me, Hawkeye." King pushed forward as Mihawk returned his strikes. They have been evenly matched for the past 6 days, approaching the 7th day of their duel. Not a blink of sleep between the two, not even a time for either to relax. But on the morning of the 7th day, and going forward to the following morning, something had changed. For suddenly, King was falling behind. Mihawk was a different monster in his own right. And in order to persevere and live another day, King had to retreat. So King transformed into his ancient zone, and he did what nobody would have expected from him. King fled. Mihawk watched as the dinosaur flew away, preparing his legs to bound after King. But he would not get a chance to chase after the zone, as a spear went through the core of King. "Gah!" He yelled in pain as he came tumbling down on the ground. Mihawk was in pursuit, finding King passed out with a trident straight through his chest. "Where have you been?" Mihawk looked up and found the man who delivered the sphere. "Oh, you know, here and there." Katakuri appeared before Mihawk and the fallen King, the man responsible for pinning down the escaping enemy commander. "I had him," Mihawk said with a smirk as he placed Yuru in his back, knowing full well that the end of the war was nearing its peak. "I know," replied Katakuri as he joined the swordsman for a stroll back to HQ. "Did you get the road poneglyph?" "Yeah, we got it. Robin is in the process of excavating it with some people." It was amazing how casually they spoke to one another, despite the massive war that was reaching its conclusion all around them. Wano. Shores of the flower capital. There was no question in the minds of the Straw Hats, as the 9 members of the Straw Hat Grand Armada remained standing, while the larger creatures known as the Beast Pirate numbers were on their back, defeated handily by the group. Zay wasn't even a challenge. Shiki was eating some nuts as he floated above the group. Monet flew beside Shiji, flying with her snow wings. She had a smile on her face as she had frozen a giant with her abilities. She was getting closer and closer to her goals, and that was to be strong enough to fight alongside the captain. "Yeah, but look at the shadows I am able to collect. So many shadows." Moria was having a feast of shadows, collecting the shadows of the giant creatures. It could come in handy later. That is, if the giants hide from the sunlight. "I can't believe you got as big as me, brother." Haruden walked alongside Yoroge, who maintained the smile on his face. "My abilities allow me to store hits. The stronger the blow, the stronger I get," replied the mad monk. "Well done, Jozu, you were such a brat in your younger days." Bullet walked alongside Jozu as they made their way back. "You're one to talk to. You were de-aged by Bonnie, weren't you?" "Yup. Feels good to be in my prime. I'm barely breaking a sweat with these small fry. Why don't you do it too?" "Yeah, I'll see about that," replied Jozu. Isn't the Straw Hats so cool? Bartolomeo was seemingly floating around Magellan as they walked back to HQ. Instead of being annoyed, Magellan had a smile on his face as a trail of his poison followed him from the passed-out body of his opponent. They are. And with a smile on his face, the former head jailer and the #1 fanboy of the Straw Hat Pirates joined the rest of the group that dealt with the numbers, returning to the HQ for further instructions. Though truthfully, there wasn't much that needs to be done. For the Straw Hats were steamrolling the beast pirates. Like clockwork. Though it took some time to defeat the awakened beast, it was not a problem at all. Roronoa Zoro with Shimotsuki Kuina. It was already the 8th day of the battle. Constant arrival of enemies continued to flow as the beast pirates and samurai of Orochis were numerous in numbers. They were also employing a play for the long game, resting some of their forces and alternating shifts. They weren't supposed to do this, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Zoro and Kuina were relieved from grunt duty, for a moment to catch their breath and get some supplements in their body. As they let their body relax for a moment, enjoying their food in silence, Zoro was caught staring. She had grown so much since the last time he saw her. He realized that she had filled her curves, her body was divine, and he could possibly be drooling. Of course Kuina noticed this, and she blushed feverishly at his gaze. What was going on in his green-haired head? She wondered if he thought of her as a woman, or was she still only a swordswoman to him? Her questions would be answered as they sat at an empty room, one that was surprisingly empty despite the busy event in Wano. As morning came, the two exhausted individuals completely missed their shift. They were supposed to be back in the battlefield 12 hours ago. But well, exhaustion caught up and it was their strategy to let their personnel rest for as long as they need. This was a long war. Go on now. Smoothie and Cracker stood in front of the duo, blocking off the Wano samurais who tried to stop them from joining the war in Orochi's castle. Zoro gave Smoothie a smile while Kuina gave her a thoughtful embrace. The duo then proceeded to head for the something was wrong. Their journey to the castle was uneventful, with minor threats blocking their path. The entranceway of the castle was littered with weapons and people alike, all of which were busy fighting one another. They immediately went to the chamber of Orochi, knowing full well he was in there, hiding. Upon entering the chamber they found the bloody Momonosuke barely standing on his 2 feet. Despite being aged by Bonnie, his body was not ready for a fight with an 8-headed monster. Then there was Hiyori, who remained defiant against the monster, but she too was meeting her limit, falling into one knee. For it had been 8 days since they battled the monster, and they have not had a moment to rest. Lady Hiyori, Lord Momonosuke, Kuina got in between her masters, defying the Yamata no Orochi before them. The creature laughed at the little woman, trying to protect her master. Futile efforts, die humans, Orochi mocked. All 8 heads danced around the group where one of the heads went to smash down on Kuina, who had all of her focus with her Lady Hiyori. But you know who was free? Zoro traveled the distance, using his 3-sword style to repel the incoming head of the massive snake creature. How dare you strike my lady? Zoro's eye glowed and surprisingly, his scarred left eye was opened. It revealed a pattern of red and black substance, circulating within its socket. Flames of hell emerged from his eyes as his anger was in full effect. Little did he know, Zoro had picked up Enma and Aim no Habakiri, then he had Shisui in his mouth to complete a set of powerful blades on hand. Feel the wrath of Ashura. Within a blink of an eye, the Yamata no Orochi was down to 7 heads as one came flying off from where it once was attached. The limbs would burn a black flame that did not allow for the heads to regrow once more. What? Orochi panicked, retreating slightly. But a blur emerged before him, and 2 more heads were sliced off. No stop. He was too fast, as the aura of the demon Ashura was unleashed by Zoro. Orochi was losing all of his heads until finally, he was down to his main head. The other 7 were discarded like they were nothing all over the room. Please spare me. The slithering creature shrunk down into his normal form, a little man who wet himself from fear. But it was not Zoro to strike the finishing blow. As the young master, Momonosuke was able to limp to where the person who ruined his life currently sat in a puddle of his own mess. Momo then extended his hand, with Zoro giving him Aim no Habakiri. Momo then proceeds to limp to Orochi, piercing him straight through the chest, causing Orochi to gag out blood. But it did not end there. "For my father," said Momonosuke weakly, staring deep into the eyes of the snake. Hiyori brought herself on both feet, with Kuina unable to muster any words as her lady was pushing herself past her limits. She slowly made her way to Orochi, with Zoro giving her enma. Momo fell backwards as aim no Habakiri continued to rest in the chest of Orochi, blood splattering everywhere. "For my father," and with one slice of her sword, Hiyori decapitated the last head of Orochi, causing the lifeless body to collapse on the ground. Zoro and Kuina watched as the siblings were finally able to fulfill their destiny. They had finally killed Kurozumi Orochi, thus breaking the cycle of hatred, built by the unjust ascent of the snake known as Orochi. Somewhere, somehow, they knew that Lady Kazuki Toki and Lord Kazuki Oden was proud of them. Proud of their children, Kazuki Momonosuke and Kazuki Hiyori. Behind the two heirs to Wano, Kushina stood right beside Zoro. Years of the fight finally reaching its pinnacle. Her whole purpose for leaving Shimotsuki village was to serve the Kazuki in place of her father. She trained endlessly night and day with Denjiro, all for this moment. And finally, the threat of the Koruzumi was finally done. Her burden was finally lifted, with her body collapsing in the arms of Roronoa Zoro. She let her soul rest in his arms as the Ashura demon receded from control of Zoro. His left eye shut close once more as he held his beloved with both arms. Zoro was able to calm the demon, by his love, outweighing the hate. "Rest now Kushina, we won." Little did he know that Orochi was only a minor domino in this massive war. Kinemon, Denjiro, Ashura Doji, Shinobu, Kikunojo, Raizo, Kawamatsu, Nekomamushi, and Inuarashi appeared in the hall, all of which were bloodied from their battle. Kinemon had fresh tears from his eyes as he put an end to the traitor, who he once called his friend. They were witness to the end of the tyrant which sold out the beautiful country of Wano. They witnessed the final slice which ended the bastard for good. On the 8th day of the war in Wano, Kurozumi Orochi was slain. Straw Hat Grand Armada Infiltration Division Commander Corazon vs Beast Pirate Flying 6X Drake. Their conversation was coming to a halt, with Corazon starting to get a grasp of the whole operation of the Beast Pirates. Joker used to be his supplier, and there was a grand plan of making artificial devil fruit, but with the death of Don Quixote, Kaido decided that his dominion shall be filled with beasts. So Kaido struck up a deal with the Marines for an exchange of zone devil fruits. He will give them the weapons from Wano. Then another opportunity appeared before him with Teach, setting up another place for zones to be delivered to him. But his goal would have been the Holy Land eventually. Too bad he won't be able to achieve this with the captain taking him out. Or will he? Then his powerful crew is based on strength, with the strongest being at the top. So that's how he operates, huh? Corazon blocked a punch and delivered his own, with X-Drake eating the punch to sell their apparent scuffle. "Commander, come in." "Commander." A voice echoed on the mini Den Mushi of X-Drake. It was from a member of Sword, one trying to reach him. "What is it?" "For the crimes of founding the Sword Unit." "Wait, but Admiral Kuzan founded the Sword Unit," exclaimed X-Drake, though his feed was cut and the informant continued. "Sir, Vice Admiral Garp is going to be. He is going to be executed in Marineford." "Oh no." Corazon heard it loud and clear. "This is not good. Not good at all. Wano, flower capital." "Brother." Lucci had been dealing with the enemies as if they were nothing. His anger at losing to Yamato was enough to motivate him despite the injuries. Lucci swiftly turned at the call and found Kaku, Khalifa, and Bluno. But someone was missing. Where the hell was Jabra? "Where is?" he began, but pain immediately filled the eyes of the former Cypher Pole agents. Lucci trembled in realization that Jabra must be dead, answered Kaku, breaking the tension in the air. Lucci took a heavy breath in as Khalifa deflected a cocky samurai who tried to interrupt their moment. "Who? What happened?" Lucci asked as he grabbed his hair in anger. Hattori realized the pain that his master was in and hung around on his shoulder for comfort. It was the Blackbeard pirates. But more specifically, a bullet through the chest by Van Auger. He let the information sink in for a moment. Then suddenly a new group arrived. At this moment, the arrival of the party from Onigashima signaled the impending end for the beast pirates. Some remained standing to fight to the death while others fell on their knees from the hopeless situation. Garara, well, looks like we weren't needed any longer here really. Whitebeard placed his Basento over his shoulder, fresh blood still drying from his victory. Doesn't look like it, huh? Those Blackbeard pirates weren't much. You got a good bunch here, Buggy. Rayleigh commented, but before Buggy could respond, Lucci approached him. Buggy. Lucci grabbed him by his shoulder, generating a welcome smile from the clown of the Straw Hats. Lucci, came out of your cave, did you? Teased Buggy. Buggy, tell me, was Van Augur killed in Onigashima? Lucci asked, trembling at the anger which he was building up. Buggy immediately caught on that this was a lot more serious than he originally anticipated. Rayleigh and Shaki looked on with interest while Newgate noticed the pain with the rest of the former agents. He knew that look, it was the look of anger upon losing a loved one. It was behind all of their eyes, and Newgate knew, he knew what this was about. And hell will freeze over before he lets this moment be ruined by some beast pirates. So Whitebeard unleashed his Basento on a pack of hyena, and then tossed some rhinoceros some yards away. Van Augur got away. Buggy responded, to which Kaku interrupted. I'll kill him, Lucci. I will end Van Augur. Then from the mountains, emerged the silhouette of a black cat. Captain Kuro had arrived. Just the person I was looking for. Kuro ran past some enemies, hacking and slashing any and all that got in the way, until finally, he got to Lucci. Shaki had since joined the battle, which meant that Rayleigh had to back up his wife. Too bad too, since the story was progressing rather rapidly with Rob Lucci. Buggy and Lucci jumped into the fight to clear a way for Kuro to join them. As Buggy demolished a bear zone, Kuro was finally able to get close to them. Khalifa and Kaku provided cover as they had the conversation that Lucci had been waiting for. Lucci, I know who you're looking for, Kuro began, to which Lucci's brain went to overdrive. Memories of his past filled his mind. From his mother's death, to his father's death, to being shaped to be a government killing machine. And finally finding a group of people who he considers his family. Lucci finally returned to the present, with Kuro providing the name of the assailant. The person he's been after ever since the beginning. Cypher Pole Aegis Zero Agent. Stussy. And as if weight was lifted off of his back, the search was finally over. Lucci knew who his target was. Good, was his response, and the group rejoined the battle at hand, cleaning up the rest of the thousands of beast pirates. Imagine this. A unit of a man named Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, was plowing through a field of awakened zone like nothing. The first mate of Gold D. Roger, Dark King Rayleigh, cutting everyone in his path with such precision and ease. The sniper queen of the Rocks pirates, Dark Queen Shaki, putting a bullet through your skull. One of the former cabin boys of the Roger pirates, and a current powerhouse of the Straw Hat Grand Armada, Buggy the Clown. Then there were 4 skilled assassins who used their expertise to eliminate any and all who opposed their cause. Imagine that. Previously, Wano, outside of the Flower Capital, Day 7. A straw hat laid beside a fallen man. Blood was splattered everywhere. And before the fallen man, was a vicious dragon-human hybrid, snarling at the fallen figure. Oh no. Mont Dore dropped the book which he had been using to record the battle. His last written text on the page was. And Mugiwara fell hard, covered in his own blood. Morgans could only look away, not believing what he was seeing. He grabbed his feathered head and pulled as he could not believe what was happening. What had happened to Straw Hat Luffy? On the first day their blows leveled the island. The poor luscious green forested land that was once a wonderland for its inhabitant had now been leveled into a wasteland. Blow for blow, Luffy and Kaido were not letting up. On the second day, it was similar to the first. This time the wildlife have found a way to escape the hellish atmosphere that the two powerhouses were exuding. Morgans and Mont Dore were daunting the encounter like there was no tomorrow. What a battle. On the third day, Kaido's punches were suddenly getting through Luffy's guard. Morgans looked on, worried for the captain, but it was all for naught, as Luffy was letting him get some punches in. Why? To test out the strength of the strongest. His fist was heavy, but his power was nowhere close to Luffy's will. Thus on the fourth day it was Luffy's turn to overtake the battle. And he started it by delivering a King Kong gun straight through the Yugal mug of Kaido. The dragon stumbled back, remaining in his hybrid form. Then Luffy continued the assault with King Kong Gatling. The dragon could not believe that he still had more in the tank. What a unit of a man. On the 5th day the status quo reverted back to normal, and on the 6th day it was more the same. But on the 7th day Kaido delivered a powerful, well-timed thunder bagua that knocked Luffy on his back, with those who witnessed the blow thinking that he had died. Ow! A sound escaped the mouth of Mugiwara. Kaido looked ahead in confusion, knowing full well that he should have been killed by that last blow. "What? Captain is alive!" exclaimed Mont Dor, who had learned to respect Luffy enough to call him his captain. Then a slap on the back of his head made him stumble a bit. Morgans had his wings crossed with a grin over his beak. "Of course, you idiot. Captain will never die." Even the former underground crime lord, head of a massive news outlet, had recognized the superiority of one, Monkey D. Luffy. Speaking of the leader of the ever-growing Grand Armada, Luffy slowly got up, shaking the dust from his body. He used Enma to boost himself to his feet. "That's all you got, Kaido?" Luffy finally said as he wiped the blood that escaped his mouth. Truth be told, the punch of Kaido's hybrid form was like getting hit by several micro-power blasts from the dragon form of the man. "You want more, I see." Kaido covered his fist with so much haki that cackles of black haki energy began to escape his hands. Though Luffy wasn't going to let the beast charge up. Instead of waiting for a chance to strike, Luffy jumped at his throat and cut him off before he could even start. Luffy removed the bond with Enma and let the staff become its original form once more. It had been days since Luffy had merged with his staff, but it was now time to go on offense. So Luffy bounded forward, covering the ground in one massive step. Then Luffy brought out his right fist, connecting with the face of the surprised Kaido. The beast was sent flying back, but Luffy's fist kept contact with the beast, ensuring that he continued to be sent further and further back. Then, Enma followed the instruction of his commander Ondi's arm to double the acceleration of the beast through the mountains of Wano. Each impact was like a mini-earthquake, and there was no signs of slowing down. But how? Kaido's impenetrable armor was pierced by the staff named Enma. The monkey got through his scales somehow and now Mugiwara had commanded the staff to expand. Their forceful entry through the earth was rapid and the enlarged form of Enma was enough to force Kaido straight through layers of the mountain range around Wano. Kaido could not even recover, his pain covered by his thoughts. How am I being beaten? I am indestructible. But then a thought crossed his mind, as he finally went through his 5th and final mountain. He came to a realization that this was his end. And to that, he was glad. Finally a day where someone could finally kill him. He was unmoving, waiting excitedly for the end of his life. Mugiwara stood in front of him, Enma shrinking to its normal size. Mugiwara covered his hands in armament haki and walked slowly towards Kaido. Kaido continued to observe Luffy as he approached him, a smile covering his face. This was it, this was the end. Luffy delivered an earth-shattering punch that caused part of the mountain to split from itself. His fist connected with the dirt beside the head of Kaido, to which the dragon looked on in confusion. "I am stronger than you, so now you serve me," Kaido the dragon. At first he had a look of disbelief, then he finally began to laugh at the situation. "Worororo. What is the meaning of this, Mugiwara? Aren't you going to condemn me for my sins of this world?" Kaido challenged, using the newfound adrenaline to challenge Mugiwara to kill him, end him of his endless misery. "That's not how this will work, Kaido." Luffy placed the staff on his back and crossed his arm, his haki receding from once covering his entire body. Kaido would move, if he could. But he wasn't able to, for he had loss. If he could though, he would have struck Luffy straight in the face for letting him live. "Your ideals are those who are stronger and are on top. So tell me, Kaido, as a beast that was once undefeated, can you not see yourself under my rule?" To this Kaido began to think. He must be keeping him alive for a reason. Was there a power far greater than himself that Mugiwara needed to handle? Then it hit him. The world government. That's gotta be it. Before, Kaido's true aim was to overthrow the world government and rule the world for himself. But now that he lost, maybe Mugiwara was the true heir to this world. "Is it the world government that you keep me alive?" Kaido asked straight away. "Yes, I will need you for the final war. So serve me, Dragon of the West." Luffy looked down on the fallen titan, who was once at the pinnacle of his power. This seemed to be the end of the line, and for the remaining ounce of his dignity, he had this choice to make. Fine. With that, the strongest creature the world soup-bed to exhaustion and finally passed out. Mugiwara Monkey D. Luffy standing over the defeated creature. The smell of death covered the air. Blood, gore, carnage. This was not how it was supposed to be. Everything was on fire. His crew was scattered, possibly dead. His armada was demolished with the combined force of the two Yonko of the sea. All your effort, and yet you still find yourself here. You have been defeated, Mugiwara. Not yet. My Nakama will. They can't do anything for your Mugiwara. They are all dead. Flashes of his life engulfed him. Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, Chopper, Robin, Frankie, Brook, Jinbei. All of his adventures led him to this, dying at the hands of Kaido. Some luck. Kaido's mace was inches from connecting with his skull, he was seconds from dying, and yet all he could think about was regret. His fist connected with the beast as a last-ditch effort, but the funny thing was, the mace did not connect with him. A cloud of smoke enveloped Luffy as his body suddenly transported to another location, several hundred yards away from his battle with Kaido. Chapter 1. Finally overcoming his demon. The demon which haunted him ever since his travel to this timeline. My name is Kazuki Toki, and I possess the time fruit. In the event that you die, we lose the end war. Again, time is an essence, Luffy. I have sent my son and Odin's scabbard 20 years into the future. And now I sent myself forward where the flame burns at its lowest, to assist you as my last will. Monkey D. Luffy, I, Kazuki Toki, will send you to the past where you deem your love for the open sea began. Goodbye, Luffy. Make good. Chapter 1. A chance was given to him to rewrite the story which resulted in his ultimate defeat, and now to bring it all into a close. The old Luffy had died in the old timeline, replaced by a more confident and competent Luffy that exuded charisma and charm. With Kaido passing out from exhaustion, Luffy finally had a seat, rest which he hasn't had in the past week. He took a heavy sigh after finally conquering the beast. Morgans flew over to where the conclusion of the battle had occurred. Mont d'Or was in tow, not believing what he was seeing. His mother, Big Mom, was one thing, but beating Kaido as well, that was something else entirely. This was truly the age of Mugiwara, and he was glad he was part of it. The end of an era, but a beginning of your new age, Captain. Where to now? Let's rest, and Mont d'Or, Morgans, please tell the crew to regroup in HQ. I'm pretty sure everyone is waiting for me to finish. What about those that refuse to surrender? Tell them they have two choices, leave or join the Straw Hat Grand Armada. With that, Luffy passed out from exhaustion, although Enma remained tense as to watch his master from any intruder. The black long staff remained erect, and alert for any potential threat. The duo exchanged a look and shrugged their shoulders. Well, Captain's orders, and they went to the main island to deliver the news. On the 8th day of the Straw Hat Grand Armada versus the Beast Pirates, Monkey D. Luffy had finally defeated Kaido. Aftermath, just as the captain commanded, Morgans and Mont d'Or brought the news. Brook had a smile on his skeleton skull, sheathing his cane sword as the end of the war was finally upon them. This past 8 days had been taxing, one that was overshadowed by his 8 decades of experience. The war with Whitebeard was intense, the war with Big Mom was crazy, but the war with Kaido was exciting. I did it, sir. Nami flew straight through the clouds and onto the arms of Brook, embracing her mentor. Brook felt like a proud father as he taught Nami how to fight with her newfound soul powers. Good job, Nami, but may I see your panties now? To this joke, Nami immediately pulverizes his skeletal head. Hell no! Exclaimed Nami, causing laughter to erupt from the surrounding. The remaining Wano samurais who were once loyal to Orochi put down their weapon as they have lost. The beast pirates reverted to their human form as they had no more reason to fight. Thank you for your assistance. Robin looked up, and Lily and Stomach along with Dory, Rode, and Goldberg were lifting the giant Rode poneglyph back to their gigantic ship. Not a problem at all, sis, Robin. Though she gritted her teeth as despite 4 massive, full-grown giants carrying the giant indestructible stone, they were struggling. Never in my decade-long life did I know of the existence of such marvels. Dory said as he was trembling from the weight of the poneglyph. Such beauty. Indeed. Added Road. With the completion of all 4 road poneglyph, it was only a matter of time before the Straw Hat Grand Armada would make their way to the Promised Land, the One Piece. Though something else needed to happen before going to Laugh Tale. We must inform the captain immediately. Corazon exclaimed in panic, knowing full well that the captain would want to save his grandfather. The circumstances was still confusing, but there was no time to diagnose the situation. I can't abandon my post with the Marines, but you will always be my commander, Sir Corazon. So I wish from this alliance and I will assist the Grand Armada against the unjust rule of those in power in Marineford. I will help in saving Vice Admiral Garp. Drake proclaimed, adding another prominent power to the Straw Hats. Though that wasn't the end of prominent allies added to the Grand Armada. So Mugiwara is resting, huh? Yamato placed her club over her shoulder as she heard the news from Morgans. The old man had finally met his match. What kind of man is this Luffy? In the center of the flower capital. Fine, I quit, just let me go. Ulti was raised to her feet by Reiju, her binding was cut. Good girl. Reiju then patted her in the head. I am not a little girl. I am literally over 20, exclaimed Ulti. Her demeanor was as entertaining as ever. Though the arrival of her brother shifted her attention to him. Pepe, what have they done to you? She ran up to page 1, who was being helped by Jinbei to walk. I'm fine, Ulti, just bruised. These people are not bad people. I wish to join the Straw Hats. To this, Ulti was shocked, but her shock turned into a smile. Okay, Pepe, she said as she helped her brother. Many of the samurais and ninjas of Wano have also changed their tunes, along with some of the beast pirates. You sure gave us a funky beating, Queen had struck a post, as Marco the Phoenix stood by him. Was there a doubt? Marco asked the former all-star of the beast pirates. We thought we were the strongest in the sea. I guess not. Queen observed as the minks assisted one another on their feet. The end of the war had finally dawned upon them. This was so cool. Carrot had a victory count of 78 samurais, 25 beast pirates, with the 2 meals and 6 hours resting time put in between the battles. The young rabbit mink jumped up and down in joy as the victory was exhilarating. Yes, it was, my dear. Mr. 2 Bonclay was twirling in excitement besides Carrot, in more ways than one. The duo were a powerful team in this battle. Whatever. Kid participated in the war, fought for the Straw Hats, and felt good about it, though what he did not expect was the watchful admiration of one, Charlotte Smoothie. If I can't have Zoro, I guess I'll be satisfied with you. Kid suddenly had a cold sweat travel through his back as the imposing women stood behind him. Then he took a big gulp. Oh, I'm in danger. Back to the Straw Hat HQ, where the Straw Hats set up a base in the middle of the flower capital. Those who were in rotation to rest, and those who were too injured to return to the battlefield all joined in a massive celebration, forgetting their pain, their injury, in this momentous victory. 1. Trafalgar D. Waterlaw plumped down on his butt beside one Tony Chopper. The duo worked tirelessly along with the rest of the medical staff to ensure that they minimized their casualties. This was harder than last time. Law said, remembering not too long ago, they went on an all-out war against Big Mom. Yeah, this was crazy, Chopper agreed, wiping the sweat from his forehead. I can't believe how far we've come, from being saved by Captain Luffy in Dressrosa, to now waging a war against the world. Law waited for a response from Chopper but did not get anything. Chopper yaw? Though the blue-nosed reindeer was fast asleep, exhausted from their job as lifesavers. Law's worries was replaced with relief and he too fell back, sleeping right where he sat without a worry in the world. Over in the kitchen, the chefs of the Straw Hats were also having their own celebration. Oven and Nougat shared an embrace, as siblings were glad that the war was finally over. And they did their job well. Not a single member of the Straw Hat Grand Armada went a day without food. Well, those who fought for 8 days straight weren't able to get food, but those people were monsters. Speaking of the monsters of the Straw Hats, the powerhouses have gathered in the square. Sanji arrived with a cigarette over his mouth. His emotional victory against Sasaki was exciting, but there was more work to do. They're nearly there, just a little more, and Captain will be the king. Zoro was carrying Kuina in his arms, positioned in a bridal style. Beside him were the 9 red scabbards, but more importantly Lord Momonosuke and Lady Hiyori. "Celebrate with us, my brothers, my sisters," Lord Momonosuke began, taking center stage to rally the participants. "For we have won this catastrophic war," followed by Lady Hiyori, the siblings working seamlessly together despite the years apart. Those who participated in the battle with the numbers were disappointed to find no more battles to fight, but they were ultimately glad that the war was now over. "Can you believe this bullet? Never did I imagine that I would ever be serving under someone." Shiki was floating beside Douglas Bullet. "Yeah, imagine that, in my time with the Roger Pirates, I thought he had assembled the strongest force the world had ever seen." Bullet crossed his arm as he observed the group before him. Speaking of his former crewmate, red-haired and Silvers were having an uncanny reunion along with the clown. "I can't believe you got beaten up by freaking Blackbeard." Buggy was giving Shanks a hard time, who remained weakened by the days of torture he received. "Buggy, it's more unbelievable that you actually defeated someone," replied Shanks with an evil smile on his face, to which Buggy began screaming at him. "Boys will be boys." Rayleigh shook his head as he laughed at the exchange. Shaki and Whitebeard stood on the side exchanging stories of olden times, back in the Crew of Rocks. "So Lin Lin is dead, huh?" Shaki said to Newgate as she took a deep breath of her cigarette. "Yeah, she died destroying her own dream." On a brighter note, with Shaki on hand and Kaido added on by Captain. "Why don't you and Rayleigh should join us?" To this Shaki had a smile. "Like old time's sake, a mini reunion." "Not interested. I'm sure we'll be present for the final war, but we won't be under any other flag." "Understandable," replied Newgate. Imagine that, the war was over. Though there was another war that was going to shake the very foundation of the world, for deep within the confines of Impelled Down, Level 6, the sole inhabitant of the prison was Monkey D. Garp, bound to the wall of the prison without a hope of escape. Before the bloodied old man were the 6 heavenly star, those of which served under I Am himself. "I'm glad you got me. Now let my subordinates go." The only reason why Garp allowed them to punish him without retaliation was the imprisoned subordinates of Monkey D. Garp, all of which were going to be tortured to death if he did not comply. "Foolish Garp, you think we will allow for your escape for what you are attempting to do?" said one of the elder stars, the tallest of the bunch. "Assembling a coup within the Marines organization, naming yourself Sword for secrecy. How stupid did you think we were?" The swordsman of the group was polishing his blade as he did not even look at the prisoner before them. Deep in the mind of Guard, blocked by multiple layers of haki, a mental battle ensued where Garp was hiding his secrets while the elder stars were trying to pry the information away from him. "For these crimes, you shall be punished with death." "Bah! I'm too old anyway, so be it." Garp had a smile on his face despite the fate which he was dealt with. He's had a long and fruitful life, but this is the end, so it seems. Suddenly, from behind the elders emerged a tall man, one of which exerted a pressure that surpassed even that of Pirate King Gold D. Roger. Even Garp could barely maintain consciousness, which was a testament to the strength of the new arrival. The 6 elder stars immediately fell on both knees, bowing their head directly in the ground. Garp could barely maintain his gaze, as the being before him was exuding too much pressure, and for a man like him to be barely conscious, this being was strong, very strong. "Garp." His voice echoed each word and lingered for a moment. "You serve a purpose for now." Thing, the empty shell of who was once Marshal D. Teach quickly made his way forward, delivering a knockout punch straight to the face of Garp. This punch was enough to knock him out for the time being, but before darkness engulfed him, Garp could hear the being say, "To lure my joy back to me." Then emptiness. Suddenly, from Marine HQ, hundreds of massive ships of destruction began to float into the sky, all of which were going into separate directions. The Pluton ships had their targets. Let the second Great Cleanse begin, Warship Island. Grandpa. Now, the girl had grown into a young woman. APIs was assisted by the Straw Hat Grand Armada in returning a dying breed of dragon back to where he belonged. Brother Zoro, Brother Usopp, Brother Sanji, and Sister Nami were the ones who helped her return the dragon back home, thwarting the attempt of Unit 8 from obtaining the Dragonite. She was so thankful for their assistance as they made quick work of the corrupt Marines. She wanted to venture with them, but Brother Zoro said that she was too young, and the pirate life is hard. She should stay with her grandfather and care for him, so she did so. She continuously looked over a hill and observed the sky, thinking one day that her friend will come back to say hello. Yes, APIs? Her grandfather asked, now too old to even stand up. The animals have been acting strange, all are basically calling out to run. What do you think is happening? I wonder. Then suddenly, the earth began to tremble and the air became thick. Screams of anguish rang in the air as countless citizens were being annihilated by several pacifistas. Grandpa, why are the Marines attacking us? APIs screamed in panic. Her animal friends were telling her what was happening in the village. I do not know APIs, but you must get to safety, exclaimed her grandfather. But what about you, Grandpa? Leave me, APIs. My time has long passed. You on the other hand must live. In the past 2 years, her grandfather was unable to get up as his life was quickly deteriorating. But in this instance, with desperation kicking in, her grandfather got up and hurried her along outside his home. Hurry now, dear. Grandpa, no. Though as APIs was pushed out of her grandfather's house, a sudden burst of energy crashed straight from the heavens and onto her home. She was knocked back by the impact, her ears ringing in pain. She slowly got up as despair filled her soul. The house which she had lived in all her life was annihilated from the face of the planet. Looking up for an answer, she found herself at a loss for words as a massive battleship floated above her. Tears welled up in her eyes as any ounce of hope was now gone. She simply closed her eyes as she accepted her fate, and the massive ship unleashed a beam of energy straight down when she was on both knees. Wano Kingdom. It didn't take long for Luffy to wake up from his slumber. The first person he would see was Hancock, then the rest of the queens would be present as well. The queens of the Straw Hats have been told the predicament in which Monkey D. Garp was under, and now the queens would be responsible for telling her beloved. They would first try to tug at his emotional heartstring. With the queens of his life, Nami without her soul entities, Viola was present, Vivi, Reiju in her raid suit though it may not stay on for long, Monet with her snow logia partially covering her private area to entice the captain, Robin with her arms crossed emphasizing her assets, and surprisingly, Yamato was present along with the other queen. She insisted to be there with the initial group as she needed to meet the man. Just in case they could not contain him, the group had agreed to surround the area with their strongest, cause they know what he will try to do. Of course they knew that it will be some time as the queens were attempting to do something to weaken the strongest emperor of the sea. Katakuri was present, along with Mihawk, Newgate, Marco, and Oven. Shiki and Bullet were closed but they were already manhandled before by Mugiwara, so they don't know what they could possibly do. Rayleigh, Shanks, and Shaki were closed as well. How long have I been out? Luffy sat up. He immediately looked for Enma, which rested on the edge of his bed. Hancock sat at the end of it, observing him, waiting for the perfect time to deliver the news. A couple of days now, replied Hancock. Robin immediately went to his side and caressed his face. How are you feeling? Robin asked. Hancock took a step back to allow for room for the others to observe their beloved. Nami gave him a kiss on the cheeks, while Monet and Vivi began to give him a massage. I feel good, so what's the occasion? Why is everyone here? Luffy's gaze shifted to Yamato, who stood imposingly in the corner of the room, observing him. He kept his eyes on her as an answer was given to him, to calm his nerves, and potentially tire him out on his decision. The girls decided to treat their beloved to a relaxing moment. Reiju could not contain herself any longer as he sat on the other side of Luffy and began to kiss him along his neck. Her kisses were intense, hungry as she hasn't had her moment with the pirate captain yet. Hancock could not contain her hunger any longer, as their mission was to drain him of his energy so that he could not try to do something dire. Dire meaning Luffy charging into Marineford to save his grandfather, where the strategy department has yet to figure out a plan specially directly after the war with the beast pirates. So Hancock immediately removed her robe, freeing her body from the bind that is her clothes. She walked slowly towards Luffy, eventually getting into all fours as her mouth drooled for his member. Luffy raised his eyebrows as both Robin and Reiju removed his trouser, revealing his erect cock for all the girls to see. Hancock enthusiastically opened her mouth, and took his all in one motion, ensuring that he felt her wet mouth all around him. She then began to slowly move up and down, ensuring that his entire member was covered in her saliva. Her enthusiasm was welcomed, but the other women began to observe and yearn for his attention. Nami removed her top, revealing her ample breast. She then began to trail kisses on the back of his neck as Luffy's shirt had been removed. Monet and Vivi began to get excited at what was happening, and they too removed their clothing. The Snow Woman and the Princess of Alabasta began to make out as they patiently awaited their turn with their king. Robin began to make out with Luffy, while Reiju waited for his lips on his other side. Viola began to touch herself, getting turned on by the situation at hand. This was a normal occurrence for the Princess of the Straw Hat Man, but for Yamato, this was her first exposure to it. All her life she had been involved in battles, fighting to figure out who is superior. She never participated in this sort of battle before. She observed curiously as Hancock seemed to be winning as the Straw Hat Captain was reeling back, his face twisted from some sort of spell that the woman was inflicting on him. As she removed herself from between his thighs, Robin enthusiastically took over, taking it from there. Hancock forced Luffy on his back as she decided to sit on his face, her other lip over his mouth. Of course, like the man that he is, he immediately got a reaction from one of the strongest women in the world. She arched her back as she bent backwards from his tongue movement. Reiju decided to go down on Luffy, and her and Robin were double-teaming his massive cock. Monet decided that it would be a good idea to rub on Hancock's clit as Luffy was eating her out. This added stimulation felt so good for the Pirate Queen as she trembled continuously from Ming so many times. Viola then began to make out with Hancock as she trembled. Her senses were heightened from their exchange. Vivi and Nami got the bright idea to approach Yamato, inviting her to join them. "Come, Yamato," Nami said seductively, extending her hands. "Care to join us in satisfying our king?" asked Vivi, both of which were already fully nude. Yamato was confused at what she was feeling, as she never felt this way before, though her body knew what she wanted, as she took them up to their offer. Robin crossed her arms while in the middle of giving Luffy a fellatio, sprouting arms around Yamato. Her arms then gently removed her attire, revealing her perfectly toned body for Luffy to see. "Wow," Luffy mustered out while Hancock removed herself from his mouth. The rest of the girls went around Luffy while Yamato I am Yamato, daughter of Kaido," she said nervously as she was trying to cover her body from his gaze. "Pleasure to meet you, Yamato," Luffy said as he sat up and extended his hands for her to take. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to." Though his member was enough for Yamato to feel a certain way, as she immediately jumped on top of him and placed her hands over his member. She then straddled him as her body guided her on what to do. She was unsure how she knew, but she knew that his thing was supposed to enter her. "I am Yamato." And so she straddled him, placing his cock inside of her. The feeling was euphoric, causing Yamato to reel back in pleasure. And to think that was only an entry, when he began to move she was somewhere else, somewhere away from the world. "By the gods, this is amazing," she screamed as her hips knew what to do, how to move so that she could maintain the highest pleasure possible. Meanwhile, the rest of the queens were making out around Luffy, with his two hands free. He was playing with the sensitive spots of Reiju and Viola, both of which were spread eagle. Hancock was eating out Nami as Robin was finger-banging Hancock. Monet was between Luffy's legs and under Yamato's ass. She used her tongue to lick along Luffy's shaft as she pleasured the captain even further. Her senses were in overdrive, and there wasn't a single woman in that room that day that did not climax at the hands of the captain. And in the end, he showered the queens of his life with his sticky substance, covering them all with what he could muster. They enthusiastically took his juice but insisted that they wanted more, so they began to work on his cock to get it back up, and for more rounds they went. Reiju hoped on once more, experiencing him again and again until she could not any longer. She made sure she did her duties as his newest queen, but she could not keep up with his endurance. How he could satisfy them all was a marvel on its own. As the ladies began to fall into deep sleep, it was Hancock, Yamato and Luffy that remained awake, continuing on with more engagement. Luffy was giving it to Hancock from the back while Yamato was rolling her eyes over due to Luffy's fingers. Though Luffy was enjoying the moment with the queen, he was feeling like something was not right. The girls were more eager than usual, begging him to use up his energy to pleasure them. Of course he could keep up, but this was just unusual. As Hancock's massive back began to tremble in reaching her climax, she suddenly collapsed on the bed, with Yamato taking him in, missionary style. "To think that a man like you could overpower me in such a way," Yamato said as she grabbed hold of his neck, inviting him to carry her. Luffy then stood on his feet, carrying Yamato as she wanted, while he was still inside her. Then he began to move her up and down, carrying her full weight along with keeping motion to ensure her pleasure was to the max. Yamato could not contain herself any longer as she let out a massive cry of pleasure. Her insides were burning with desire as he let the Straw Hat Man take control of her, tame her, from a wild beast to his woman. After Yamayo reached her climax, Luffy set her down and let her rest. Meanwhile he crawled between the woman, with Hancock wrapping her arms around him. "How are you feeling?" Hancock whispered as she was too tired to do anything else. All around Luffy were his queens, all of which were satisfied to the maximum. A sudden change in the mood caused Hancock to tense up slightly. "I feel wonderful, say. What is going on?" Luffy caught on. "Luffy, you have to promise to be rational about this," Hancock began, her eyes opening up from fear of his next course of action. "Go on then," he said, not knowing what she was about to reveal. Drake is with the Marines, but he is loyal to a secret Marine agency known as SWORD. Within SWORD are Marine activists who are not fond of the world government. Your grandfather, Monkey D. Garp, is a prominent member of the group, and by the confirmation of Corazon. "Okay, what is going on? Please tell me." She could not lie to her beloved. "Luffy, your grandfather was framed as the founder of the group and he is going to be executed for conspiring against the world government." A sudden gust of wind passed through the room, with Luffy looking shocked from the revelation. And he did what they all expected, immediately grabbing his staff and dashing outside the door. His sudden movement was enough to wake the rest of the queens, with Hancock slamming her legs straight to the ground in front of Luffy. The ground broke from the impact, causing Luffy to stop for a moment. Imagine her perfect skin, and her ample body completely nude as she slammed her foot on the ground before Luffy. It was both imposing and sexy at the same time. "Hancock, please don't do this," Luffy asked as he began to put his clothes on. "This is exactly why we wanted to tire you out, because of wanting to do something so rash." Suddenly, Hancock was joined by the rest of the women, all of which were still fully naked but now stood before Luffy to stop him from going. "Luffy, let us come up with a plan first," Monet pleaded as Luffy took a big gulp from looking at all his queens in their naked glories. "These things take time, and your grandfather's execution date is not set yet. Let us plan this," Robin added, with the rest of the women nodding in agreement. Luffy then relaxed for a moment. He then looked up at each of his ladies. His resolve was clear with his eyes. Despite the amazing woman before him telling him to stop, he was too focused. Hancock's eyes widened as she knew what he was going to do. Luffy no. Yamato attempt to catch him, but he was too fast. Suddenly Luffy bounded through the roof of the room, clearing all the way to the sky with a single bound. "Enma, guide me to my grandfather," commanded Luffy, although there were people waiting for him outside. The entire Grand Armada was there to stop him. "Captain, you have to relax." Mid-air, Brook, Sanji, Zoro, and Jinbei have surrounded Luffy. "You have to calm down, we have to think this through," Zoro stated, knowing full well where anger will bring someone. "Captain, do not do this," Sanji stated. Jinbei whipped up an ocean pillar to attempt to slow the fruit user. "Captain," Brook began, although Luffy was not having any of it, whipping out his elongated rubber legs as a whip and slamming down on all four of the commanders, knocking them straight to the ground. "Goddamn, what a monster," Zoro said with a smirk on his face. Luffy then grabbed onto Enma and began to bound from building to building. In his path were different members of the Grand Armada trying to stop him. "Captain, you have to stop." Enel was in his Amaru form, but a single King Kong gun was enough to knock him out of the way. Then Jozu and Crocodile were up next, and Luffy dispatched them easily with a gum bazooka through the chest of Jozu and a gum gatling straight to the face of Crocodile. There's no stopping him. Jozu could not move as he was etched on the ground. Crocodile was beside him, groaning at the painful punches by the captain. The newest members of the Straw Hats, those who diverted from the Beast Pirates. They were about to experience the power of their new captain. With Page 1 and Ulti attempting to do a double headbutt in their hybrid form. Although they weren't able to do a damn thing as Luffy trucked straight through the ancient zones with his bound man form. Page 1 and Ulti could not believe how severely outmatched they were as they groaned loudly from the manhandling they just received. Captain, please think this through. Arlong and Lucci were up next, with Lucci meeting the fist of Luffy straight through his guts while Arlong was slammed straight down by a gum pinwheel. Nothing was stopping him from getting to his grandfather. No logical thought even went in his head during this trying time. Captain Ya. Up next were Law, Captain Yoi, and Marco, who stood over the roof tallest buildings. Law had prepared his room, and as soon as the captain got within the confines of his abilities, their plan was in motion. Marco jumped straight for Luffy, attempting to capture him with his phoenix talons. Although Luffy reeled both arms back, extending them to their limits. Then when Marco was close enough, Luffy retrieved his outstretched arms and delivered a devastating gum bazooka. Although he hit nothing but air as Law teleported Marco right behind Luffy, trading him in the place of Enma. Marco's talons covered Luffy, the duo thinking that they had won. They have not, as Luffy exuded enough haki to get out of Marco's clutches. He then unleashed a flurry of gum gatling to create enough separation between himself and the Phoenix. Then as the barrage ended, Marco could only hang his mouth wide open as a massive cone gun was sent straight through his face. Law was able to swap places with a pebble to ensure he did not get knocked out, but now, in his futile attempt to stop the captain, he found himself on the tip of Enma. The extended staff pinned him on the ground, knocking him out. Not a single member of the Straw Hats could have stopped him, but those who could possibly stand a chance remained at the edge of the continent of Wano. Whitebeard, Mihawk, Katakuri, Bullet and Shiki. Luffy saw them in the distance, as he dealt swiftly with Haruden and Moria. His eyes became enraged at the lengths his crew would go to stop him from saving his grandfather. He wasn't going to let anything happen to him, even if it killed him. Logic was out of the window. All Luffy wanted to do was get to his grandfather. Suddenly from the hospital wing, where a certain dragon was being treated for his injury, Kaido opened his eyes and understood the command of his new captain. Kaido immediately transformed into his dragon form, and the western dragon flew straight into the heavens. He then built up enough firepower in his abdomen and released his famed Boro breath straight through the heavens and into the shore. Those who were meant to stop Luffy had to disperse at the attack by Kaido. Kaido then flew straight down and joined Luffy, allowing him to get on his head as the dragon flew straight through the sky and away from Wano Kingdom, their destination, Marineford. Damn it all, Katakuri exclaimed, slamming his fist onto the ground. Whitebeard looked onward along with Rayleigh, observing as Kaido and Luffy disappeared in the distance. The determination of their captain was unparalleled. Although they understood his position, he would do the same for any of them. But that was not the extent of their troubles, for from the tower of the Flower Capital, out came Morgans with some dire news. Everyone. The whole world is under attack. Morgan's announcement causing confusion with the commanders of the Straw Hats. This can't be happening, Katakuri thought in his head, already knowing what Morgans would say, with his future sight. What do you mean by this, Morgans? Asked Whitebeard. To which Morgans was pale from the news he received from his countless information network. East Blue, Dawn Island, Dayton. Did you pay me for the fish you took yesterday from the villagers? Whoop Slap was on top of the mountain. One where the mountain bandit, Dayton, currently resided. Shut it, Whoop Slap. So early in the morning. The two had a friendly banter ongoing. Though all of a sudden, the sky became dark as the sun was covered by a massive flying object. Hey, who turned off the light? Dayton said as her cigarette fell from her mouth. That ain't normal. Whoop Slap said as he looked up along with Dayton. North Blue, Jerma 66, Father, you stupid deadbeat, the North Blue is within our grasp and you sit here and sulk. Niji exclaimed as he did not have an ounce of kindness in his heart. It was genetically modified away from him. Sister Reiju was right to leave this dump, said Yanji. Suddenly alarm began to flare all over the floating fortress. What the hell is going on with all that noise? Exclaimed Judge, who decided to look outside. Then his face turned pale as he saw what was blocking the sky. South Blue, Sorbet Kingdom. Our Bonnie sure is making waves with the Straw Hats, isn't she? The queen of the Sorbet Kingdom, Connie, currently resided in her bed. She had grown weaker and weaker by the years of waiting for the return of her children. She had been talking to an outline of a man, one of which was holding the holy Bible. He was a giant man, formerly known as a tyrant of the Sorbet kingdom. "Mother, you must rest." The giant man attempted to guide his mother to lay on her back, but his mother swiped his hands away. "Oh hush, Kuma, your mother is still strong." The elder queen stood on both feet and took hold of her walker. She wanted to look up in the sky to observe her beautiful kingdom. As she made her way to her window, she found that the sun was covered by a massive foreign object. Her eyes widened in despair as a myth had turned into reality. "Kuma dear, please embrace your dear mother." West Blue, Kano country, Sai. In the country of Kano, the onslaught was already underway. Beams of energy was being launched straight through the country, and not a single member of the kingdom could muster enough force to even attempt to deflect the ongoing carnage. Don Chinjiao, the commander of the Hoppo Navy, had successfully slain 2 pacifistas on his way to the injured sovereign. "This is the end, Sai," Don Chinjiao said weakly as he continued to bleed out. "No, don't say that." Tears trailed down the face of Sai as hell was literally upon them. Sai then looked up and cursed the heavens for their situation. What could this be? What was happening? Morgans continued with the news. The world Newgate. The world. Countless giant battleships are found around the entire world. From the East Blue, North Blue, South Blue, West Blue. There is nowhere safe. The Pluton ships have been mobilized to destroy the world. "Fuck!" exclaimed Oven, who happened to join the group. Magellan was also present as the announcement was brought to everyone's attention. "We need to act immediately. I need teams of 4 to go to corresponding areas around the world and try to bring down those damned Pluton ships. If it's not a possibility, then help as many people as possible." Katakuri began to command the troops as he was second in command to Luffy. "Go on and assemble your core 4, but I want 1 commander with each group." With his command, the group dispersed, with Katakuri joining his group. It took only a few minutes to organize the Grand Armada into several groups of 4, with his group including Vivi, Pell, and Bon Clay. Their destination was Alabasta. The next couple of groups were headed to Atlantis Island, Dressrosa, Dawn Island, Gecko Island, Drum Island, Amazon Lily, Kokoyashi Village, Punk Island, Sabaody Archipelago, Germa 66. Those who are staying in Wano to protect the kingdom, and so on. The dispatch was quick, and there was a group also sent after the captain, which included Bluno and Enel. "Make sure to bring him back," exclaimed Katakuri as each group separated. He called after Bluno and Enel as they opened a door. "Of course," answered Enel as he closed the door from behind him. The tables were set. It was time to rescue the world. Warship Island. Present APIs knew she was dead, but nothing ever reached her. She did not feel pain or emptiness. She could feel, smell, hear like she was still alive. Upon opening her eyes, she saw the back of a green coat, and in his waist were the most memorable 3 sword sheaths that she ever saw. "Zoro-san?" she said weakly, fresh tears still covered her eyes. "Hey APIs, please make your way to the mirror portal. We need the civilians safe." Zoro commanded. He had all 3 swords out, absorbing the power beam that was meant to kill APIs. Around him were a long-nosed lady who opened a bunch of mirror portals. A beautiful swordsman that skillfully destroyed 2 pacifistas. And a handsome spiky white-haired swordsman with 2 pink lines trailing down a flashy cool-looking suit. More tears filled her eyes as she realized that she was safe. "All right team, let's save these kind people," commanded Zoro. "Aye," answered the team of Raisin, Kuina, and Brule. All hope was not lost quite yet. Marineford, empty throne. His hands etched within the core of his own creation, his own brother, Pluton. He looked into the eyes of his brother who did not have any fear or regret behind them. He was defiant even in death, his soul traveling quickly into the distance. His brother escaped, but where to? What does it matter? This was his world to play with. His eyes opened and the first thing that came to mind was the flawed battleship, the one that can be destroyed by mere mortals with the powers from the Atom Tree. Beside him was the vessel of Cerberus, the body of Teach. He would have loved to have his sister back, for full control of the sea as was his control of the heavens. But alas, his sister was elusive, and the mortals were defiant. "Brother." Was your creation this flawed? Maybe it should not have been created. Its voice echoed as it sat alone on the supposed empty throne. If it was created as intended, wasn't your ship supposed to destroy the wall which separated the seas? These mortals continue to oppose my rule. A cleanse once more will bring out my joy. It then got up and approached the massive window which had a vantage point of the execution platform, several thousands of miles away. Yet he can see it clearly, the entire force of the Marines, surrounding an execution platform, where the hero of the Marines rested between two blades, ready to penetrate him at any moment. Monkey of the D clan. Garp. You have served me well, but your purpose is to bring me joy, boy. Marineford, execution platform. The Marine powerhouses were all present, with the world government, Marines, and warlords all being in one place. It was truly monumental. The world government had all the members of the cipher pole in the area, all of which were hidden in plain sight, within the Marine population. A certain Marine standout noticed a new lady amongst his group. He looked her up and down and immediately scratched his head. "You're new around here?" asked the Marine, to which the short-haired, blonde woman dressed in Marine attire turned her head and gave him a smile. "Yes, a transfer." "Ah, I see." With that the Marine officer just dropped it, paying attention to the line. Then with the presence of the world government amongst them, the Marines still boast heavy powerhouses within their organization. There were 6 admirals, several vice-admirals, and so on. Notable names included Admiral Akainu, Admiral Kizaru, Admiral Aokiji, Admiral Fujitora, Admiral Ryokugyo, and Admiral Z. Then amongst the vice-admiral included Doberman, Suru, Momanga, Onigumo, and so on. Finally the government dogs, those who worked for the government as sanctioned pirates. Lady Alvida, the ruler of the East Blue prior to the arrival of the Straw Hat Emperor. Orlumbus the explorer, a man with a massive grand fleet, all of which rested in or around Marineford at this moment. Bartolomeo Kuma was not present, taking care of something in his homeland. Weevil stood firm, his mother standing beside him with a shit-eating grin about her. Foxy remained smug as always, for the man has never experienced hardship in his lifetime. He won because of his overpowered ability. Trafalgar Law was no longer recognized as a warlord for his betrayal and impelled down. Then, arguably the strongest of the bunch was the man that nobody could seem to find, with Portgas d'Ace not showing up for the execution. "For the sins of attempting a coup against the Marines, we sentence your death, Garp," said the pained Sengoku, not looking at the eyes of his friend. He then gave the painful command for the execution of the Marine hero. Flashes of their adventure together, capturing billions worth of pirates together, and rising through the ranks together. To see it end here, it pained him severely. As the blade of the executioner was coming close to the Marine hero, from the eastern wall of the base, a massive fire explosion erupted from the distance. The pillar of fire was a magnificent sight, and yet it was even more amazing that at the end of it, a certain fire fist emerged from the flames. Ace was in Marineford. "Ace, what are you doing against the government? You are a warlord?" exclaimed a confused Sengoku, though Ace's answer was sending more fireballs at the Marines, attempting to make his way through the countless Marines with his crew, Mas Deuce, and Perona. The fleet admiral was conflicted on killing his friend, or following orders like the perfect Navy officer that he was. "Don't touch the old man," exclaimed Ace as he delivered a Heiken straight through the hundreds of Marines in between himself and the execution platform. Memories of his early life with the Marine hero were scary, but he was still the father figure of Ace when he would be on the island. He was his protector from those who tried to kill him for being Roger's child. But that wasn't the end of it, as from the western wall, the son of Garp came out, bringing the entire force of the Revolutionary Army with him. "Dragon!" exclaimed Sengoku, who had been looking forward to capturing and eventually executing the most wanted man in the world. The man who had been actively causing the most problems for the world government was now here, saving his own grandfather from certain death. A rear admiral who was stationed on the western wall tried to get the jump on the dragon, but instead found himself on the receiving end of a foxfire-infused metal pipe. He then fell flat on his face as the single strike was enough to knock him out. The second in command of the revolutionaries stood over the rear admiral, anger seething through his veins. "Calm down, Sabo, we have a tall task ahead of us, and you have to keep a level head for this mission. advised Dragon, to which he nodded in understanding. The Marines were in panic as they were getting hit from two fronts, with the entire Spade Pirates on one side, and the Revolutionary Army on the other. An order was given to continue the execution, this coming from the Elder Stars of the Holy Land. "Call the medics," Garp said with a smirk, confusing the executioner who was now mere inches from penetrating his skin. Though the blade would break at contact. The arrival of his adopted grandsons and his own son surged new energy into his soul. But not for me. Suddenly Garp unleashed a deadly wave of haki that caused those around him to pass out. He then covered his face with a smile as he ripped the chains on his wrist, and removed the wooden block that held his head down. "Awahaha! Who did you think I was, brats?" Garp stood over the platform. Now a clear path to his escape would be to join his son and adopt grandson and get the hell out of the Marine base. Sengoku then looked at his friend and Garp looked at him. "It is my duty, Garp." Although if Sengoku was really serious, then everything around them would be decimated. But the fleet admiral was pulling his punches, to give his friend a chance to escape. With his weak attempt at punching Garp, the hero delivered a powerful punch, silently thanking his friend for giving him a chance to escape. With Sengoku out of the picture, Garp jumped from the platform and the official escape party began, with Garp easily handling the fodders. Not one of the admirals, nor the warlords moved an inch, observing at the events. Garp was confused at this as he tossed a massive wooden platform at the general direction of the Marine admirals, only for it to be sent into space by Admiral Fujitora. What was their play? Then from a distance, a mighty roar of a beast covered the air, and Garp looked up, squinting his eyes to identify the dragon. "Kaido!" exclaimed Vice Admiral Onigumo. "There's someone on his back," said Momonga, taking a tight grip of his sword. Finally, my joy, chills ran down every person's back, although they could not pinpoint what, for something was coming, and it was coming fast. "It's Monkey D. Luffy." Suddenly, everyone was on high alert, for two of the active emperors were heading straight for Marineford, with seemingly forming an alliance. At this news, the warlords were suddenly exig the way in intercepting the incoming pirate emperor. "Fefefe, Mugiwara, I have been waiting for this." Foxy stood on the top of the southern gate, pointing at Luffy as he rode on the back of the dragon Kaido. Luffy had a determined look on his face, and despite the opposition before him, Kaido was adamant in clearing the path of his new leader. Mid-flight, Kaido unleashed a Boro breathe straight through the northern gate, demolishing a decent-size hole where Foxy once stood. Yet the warlord was no pushover, as he had his hands out, slowing everything around him to slow the Boro breathe enough that it did not harm him even a little bit. "Fefefe Kaido the beast, more like Lamo the wimp," exclaimed Foxy, though his eyes nearly popped from their socket as Luffy appeared before him, Enma connecting with his guts. "Gah! Shut the hell up, Foxy." With a single blow, Luffy had entered the battle in Marineford, with Kaido transforming into his human form beside him. "Clear a way to my grandfather Kaido." "Aye, Captain," answered the beast, to which the Marines around the duo deadpanned in shock. The person in charge of transponding a message to the communication depot relayed the information. Kaido is now serving under Mugiwara. Akainu received the news and crushed the armrest on his chair. The freakin' pirates are now joining under one flag. This was troublesome. Fujitora smiled at the incoming attack from such strong personnel. Kizaru and Ryokugayu couldn't look more bored. And Kuzan was buying his time to reveal his actual allegiance, and that was being the actual founder of Sword. Meanwhile, Zephyr removed his coat and disappeared in a blur, his aim being Mugiwara. Though Zephyr would never reach the straw hat-wearing emperor, as Kaido intercepted his haki-infused punches with his own, the collision sending shockwaves all over the battlefield. "Kaido, you've become nothing but a pet?" asked Zephyr. His veins threatened to pop from his anger. "I am but a servant of the king," replied Kaido as he unleashed a Boro breath in the face of Zephyr. Luffy immediately jumped away from the battle of the Admiral and Kaido, Enma in his right hand. Enma then activated its ability to clone itself by creating hundreds of Luffy copies, all of which maintained a fairly high tolerance while retaining his rubber ability along with long staff mastery. Not a single man could break his stride as Luffy was mowing through the hundreds of Marines in his paths, be it giants, long leg, long arm, 3 arms, 3 limbs, humans, Fishman, woman, men, young, old, it did not matter who was in his way, for Luffy went through all of them. His clones made quick work of the Marines as he swiftly made his way to his grandfather. Dragon smiled at the arrival of his son, and both Ace and Sabo from both sides of Marineford also smiled with the arrival of their brother. "Big bro Luffy. Glad that you could join us," Ace yelled as he hopped over a rear admiral and tossed him across the battlefield. He then erected several pillars of flames and unleashed them all around him. "Run!" exclaimed the Marines, though one of the warlords in particular decided to challenge his might, for from the platform which she once stood, Alvida slid down straight to where Ace was located, unleashing a flurry of silverware which she sped up with her slippery fruit. "Lady Alvida, a pleasure," Ace said with a smile as the silverware simply went through the fire human. Alvida continued to charge forward, their first eventually clashing in a crackle of hockey and flames. "Bro Luffy. It's been a while," exclaimed Sabo with a massive grin plastered across his face. He manifested several manifestations of foxfire traveling through the battlefield to knock out the Marines. This time, it was Weevil who decided to intercept Sabo by swinging his massive Basento through the bodies of the foxfire manifestations. "Hello big dummy," Sabo said with a smirk, tipping his top hat at the massive brute. This of course angered Weevil. Dragon and Luffy shared a look for a moment, both of which were there for the same thing, their family. Luffy had yet to forgive his father, but at this moment, they are there to work together. So with a simple nod, they were both on the same page now. And Dragon unleashed a wave of air vacuum that cleared a path for Luffy to reunite with his grandfather. Garp shed a single tear at the arrival of his family, now only mere inches from rejoining with his grandson. Although from behind him, a feeling of dread suddenly filled him, as a single entity manifested from behind him. Garp attempted to turn around to deliver his famous earth-shattering strike, but the being caught his hands, and twisted him back to face Luffy. Then it was swift yet memorable as Garp could only mouth a thank you to Luffy before his head fell from his body. A smile plastered on his face. "No," exclaimed Luffy, as flashes of his tenure in his original timeline replayed back. His grandfather had a smile on his face as a sharpened blade straight through his head, going through with a clean cut. In one fell motion, the hero of the Marine was wiped from the planet. Over his lifeless corpse was the being, appearing from out of nowhere, and stopping the reunion of the monkey family from ever happening. The powerful being was able to raise its hands, unleashing a powerful wave to force Luffy back with a single motion with its palm. "My joy." Suddenly, from around the creature emerged the 6 heavenly stars, all of which were ready to protect I Am with their life. All the commotion, the battles, were put into a halt as all eyes were on the exchange at center stage. Dragon trembled as his worst fear had come into fruition. Sabo and Ace cried at the death of their grandfather. It was a hopeless situation for all. Luffy was not one to give up as he stretched his arms back, expanding Enma to be a large staff, and bringing it down over the head of I Am. His anger seething through his strike as the surrounding area was destroyed with the clash. And I Am simply brought his arms up, catching the staff with ease and crushing it in his very hands. The pain of Enma could be felt by Luffy himself, as the perfect clones of himself dispersed with the fall of the long staff. There was no time to look after his weapon, as I Am simply teleported in front of him. He brought his arms up and simply backhanded Luffy, sending him back all the way to the place in which he entered the plaza. With the captain of the Straw Hat Grand Armada knocked out by the being, the entire forces of Marineford were shocked to say the least. Sengoku trembled at the loss of his friend. For the strongest man in the world, fell to the hands of this unknown entity known as I Am. "Joy Boy. You've returned in a different form, but you still lack the power to overthrow me. As were your previous attempts." His voice was cold, and it echoed throughout the air. Those who were closed, curled up in the abnormal aura that this being exuded. It was like by being close to him, one could just die. You must die again and resume this endless game we play. I Am was ready to bring down his hands, aimed for the heart of the vulnerable Luffy. But lightning surrounded him, stalling him for a moment. This moment was enough for the Thunder user to retrieve his captain and tossed him to the waiting arm of a certain door user. "Go on Bluno, I will take care of this." The god of thunder smirked at the literal god of the world, defying him. was entertained yet annoyed that Luffy escaped his grasp. Imagine walking into an insane war, where their only goal was to reach their captain to set him free from the grasp of a literal monster. No, Enel, you must go. And suddenly, a door erected from in front of Enel, and as the Thunder User was ready to die for his captain, another was prepared for the necessary sacrifice. Tried to smite the Thunder User only to find a door before him, with the Thunder User gone. For Bluno has forced Enel through one side of the door, and forcibly closing it, sending him into the door dimension, and somewhere far ays opened for the allies, putting an abrupt end to the battle in Marineford. Looked into the distance smiling under his mask. Or otherwise known as Uranus, found great joy in the games the humans are playing. In the meantime he held the head of the defiant door user. Continued to hold him by his throat as Bluno continued to defy him. The door user built up snot on the back of his throat and spat on the face of the god. In spite of his absolute authority and divinity, found the action to be repulsive, and without further delay, crushed the skull of Bluno, leaving a puddle of blood in the center of Marineford. Laughable. Everyone who was there could only watch, as they knew that something else was happening. Himself disappeared in a blur while the 5 Elder Stars gave out orders. The battle was going to commence into the next stage, and that next stage was going to be fought on the final island in the New World itself. All personnel begin loading the battleship. We are heading to Raftel. The orders erupted from all around Marineford. There was no time to rest for anybody. An audible gasp could be heard everywhere. The final island itself. Holy shit. Kizaru dropped his shades at the exchange. In all his experience, whoever the hell this was, he knew he was strong. I knew those world government bastards were hiding something. But doesn't matter, as long as justice prevails, said Akainu as he made his way to the transport snail. Orders were orders, especially when it involved killing pirates. Damn it, Garp. Kuzan gripped his fist as Ryokugyo comforted him for their loss. Their loss. All the years of planning and to lose one of their top combatants. So they knew how to get to the final island after all. Fujitora had an angry expression across his face, following the trails of the entity. But he lost him quickly, which scared him as his observation haki was bar none. He could sense the ant which crawled back to its queen several miles away, but this being. Meanwhile Zephyr cracked his jaws as Kaido had a good punch. Goddamn dragon. Though Zephyr looked slightly interested in the reveal of someone which the 5 idiots, his words, followed. Alvida licked her lips as she became excited from her battle with Ace. Another time. His flames never harmed her as her skin was untouchable. Or was he just holding back? Screw this. I did not sign up for this shit. Foxy got up on both feet. He was utterly embarrassed by the Straw Hat captain. Though before him, appeared a pissed-off Elder Star, who held his exposed katana over the neck of Foxy. Rethink your next step, pirate. You're either with the world government or against us. Foxy thought about his next step carefully, assessing whether he should challenge this person. His fruit could work, but would he be fast enough to activate his abilities? Overall he thought it through. Fine. It was not worth the risk. Orlumbus massaged his beard, observing the event. A call came in from one of his ships. Captain, what do you want to do? We go. Not like they have much choice. So the massive fleet of Orlumbus followed the Marines towards the final island, where the famed treasure of Gold D. Roger was located. To think that the world government had that information all along. It was very concerning. Weevil had been buried to the ground by his head from his exchange with Sabo. He continued to flail as he tried to get off the ground. It was a tense situation, a short skirmish for the people of Marineford. But the real war was not until later, and it wasn't going to be there. The Marines were on the move, and with the directions given to them by the mysterious they were headed to Laugh-Tale. Dawn Island. East Blue. The Revolutionary Army arrived in Dawn Island. Ace's ears continued to ring, though he was brought out of his daze by Sabo, who helped him on his feet. Sabo pointed up where the Revolutionary Army was already in action. Overhead was a massive battleship, ready to wreak havoc throughout the island. There was no time to think, they had to move. Ace located the Spade Pirates. Upon seeing the battleship, he did not have time to process his grief. For the island where he grew up was at a risk of destruction. Let's go, brother. Ace unleashed a jet of flames under his feet. Flame Emperor. He built a massive fireball on his hand ready to throw at the Pluton ship. "Right behind you, brother." Sabo followed after him, with a jet of fox flames replacing the bottom half of his body. The orange and red spectacle was a sight to see. Fox brilliance. The flame in which Sabo emitted was different from Ace as it was pure orange in color, and it was indeed brilliant to look at. Though one particular lady looked around, curious as to try and find the captain of the Straw Hat Grand Armada. But no traces of him, not even her hollows could locate him. Enel, one of the commanders of the Grand Armada, was there. Bluno made his noble sacrifice, but there was no sign of the captain. Where was Monkey D. Luffy? Wano, thanks Sis Brûlée. You're really holding the portals well. Senor Pink had been tasked with guarding Brûlée, who was keeping the mirror portals open for the different groups of Straw Hats that were sent to different parts of the world. The Pluton massacre was underway. Outside, the beast pirates have turned the tide by defending the island from 2 Pluton ships. King, Queen and Jack worked together on one, while the 9 red scabbards, Hiyori and Momonosuke worked on another. Pacifistas continued to rain down on the beautiful land, but the citizens of Wano nor the recently defeated beast pirates were going to turn tail on the situation. King flew high, his flaming wings igniting his mouth to pierce through the massive battleship. But his attacks were small compared to the ship. But he did leave a massive hole by launching his flames outwards, burning a small part of the battleship. Queen was tossed to the top of the ship by Jack, who used his inhuman leaping ability to hop on top of the ship. They then began to wreak havoc within the belly of the ship, eventually forcing it to go down. The 3 calamities were no-go joke, and they proved it by taking down Pluton. "Who thought we would work for anyone else other than Kaido-sama?" Queen said as he lit a cigar on his mouth. "Not I," replied Jack as he crossed his arms. "Yup," King said as he let out more flames to burn the rest of the ship down. The calamities were a force to be reckoned with, and they were now begrudgingly part of the Straw Hat Grand Armada. Lucky for them, the Pluton ship which they destroyed hit the side of the Great Wano waterfall and came crashing down to the bottom of the ocean, with no casualties. The Flying Six have scattered, with the siblings joining the Straw Hats, Huzu flying to wherever he was. Black Maria was incapacitated and X-Drake was with the damn Marines. Those who can went with the 4-man group plan to help as much of the world as they can. Meanwhile, the Scabbards used their strongest attack to damage the ships, with Hiyori delivering a cut that sliced down the wings of the ship. "Hurry with the evacuation, we have to clear the crash site of this damn battleship," ordered Lady Hiyori, to which everyone listened. When she spoke, people followed. Ultimately, Wano was able to defend itself from the incoming battleship, but how was everyone else doing? Atlantis Island, the massive Pluton ship was doing its damage. The pacifistas were killing the humans and fishmans of the island. King Neptune tried his best to protect his people, but alas, he was on his back with a sizable hole on his chest. Queen Otahime held her husband as he took in his last breaths. Fisher Tiger remained angry, trying all he could to defend the people of Atlantis, but they lacked the manpower. Not even their giant harpoons could bring down the damn battleships. That was until the Sea Kings themselves rose from the bottom of the ocean, all of which had one goal in mind: to destroy the Pluton ship. Giant crab creatures, shark, whales, and other D from the deep blue and reached for the heavy, the crab able to clamp down the ship. People looked up in awe, watching as the ship that killed so many was being destroyed by Sea Kings. Before he took his final breath, King Neptune was able to see that his beautiful daughter commanded the Sea Kings into action. With that final image in his mind and the feeling of warmth in the arms of his wife, King Neptune sook-bed to death. Though it wouldn't be until much later that Princess Shirahoshi would learn of his passing, for she had an island-destroying ship to deal with. Just as Pluton began its descent from heaven, a portal opened that revealed Arlong, Namur, Hatchin, and Delinar. Wow! Arlong immediately froze as he witnessed the power of Shirahoshi. The former weak little girl was now commanding Sea Kings. The battle for the world is going to commence in a matter of days. I have inherited the will of the sea. I don't know how, and I don't know why, but my gut is telling me that I need to head further into the new world, to a lone island filled with mystery. Shirahoshi spoke from the top of a Sea King's head, her voice echoing throughout Atlantis Island. "So I say, who is with me?" she screamed to the collective approval of the crowd. Poseidon was reborn once more, and this time, she was not going to ignore the faith of the world for her safety. And yet Shirahoshi has yet to learn of her true origin. White Teach stole her from her homeland and how she was able to find her home with the help of sea canes. She just knew where to go and when, but she did not know why. She did not know that she was Poseidon. Punk Island, Tom, Frankie, also known as Cutty Flam, the apprentice of Tom, brought a team with him to take down the Pluton ship that was sent to Punk Island, originally Punk Hazard in normal timeline. Polly and Iceberg can only do so much with the carpenters, and it was a welcome sight for the Straw Hats to arrive. Frankie, Blamenco, Scarlet, and Lily and Stomach were his team. Frankie was a master mechanic, immediately jumping into the belly of the Pluton ship and locating its core. He knew of its location due to the one they destroyed in Whitebeard's home island. Blamenco and Scarlet were his muscles while Lily enlarged and shrunk as she was needed, the group ultimately destroying the battleship. The ship ultimately went down on the eastern edge of the island, and Frankie was now reuniting with his mentor. Flam, or should I call you Frankie now? Tom immediately embraced his disciple, the two sharing a moment with one another. Frankie is fine, the name stuck with me already. Cyborg gave Tom a thumbs up, to which Tom smiled. So Pluton, huh? Frankie knew that Tom had the blueprint. He was going to get around to asking Tom about it, to figure out a quicker way to destroy it. Yeah, the world government has it, but what they have is actually an incomplete version, one that is functioning at 20% of intended capacity. Tom suddenly revealed, to the shock of the group. You have to all leave this place immediately, as the Marines and their buster call will arrive in a matter of days. Some bet you made, for that boy is dead, so when they come and Pluton is not here. That's the thing, you will leave it here. What did you say, boy? Once again Tom began to flare up in anger. This damn brat was going to willingly hand over Pluton to the world government? Tom, listen. Shanks activated his Conqueror's Haki, causing Iceberg and Polly to fall flat on their face. He's not dead yet, he'll be back. I promise. Shanks brought out his hands asking for the blueprint. Tom stared into the eyes of the red-haired emperor. He then finally gave in, opening his safe and giving Shanks the blueprint. Tell me, Tom, is there a way that we can? I see, responded Tom. Chapter 35. Red Hair and I worked together to alter the blueprint, enough so that it does not work at full capacity. Where is the real thing then? Frankie asked, to which Tom smirked. Polly and Iceberg smirked and shared a look to the confusion of the former Cutty Flam. On the time that it would be needed, I decided it would be a good idea to. Tom pointed at the location of the real Pluton, and he pointed down under their feet. Build it for Mugiwara. Oh shit. Somewhere though that wasn't it, for a straw hat wearing man sat up suddenly. He looked around and found himself on a giant rock. He felt light on it like there was barely anything holding him down. You are finally awake. Luffy's head suddenly turned quickly, finding himself on an outdoor laboratory. He found the person with him to be wearing a lab coat. He wore golden gloves on both hands as he was working on something. His back was turned as Luffy remained cautious. Where am I? Luffy asked. Luffy then remembered that his staff and found the staff connected to several devices. It seemed to be doing well, which calmed his nerves slightly. Your friend attempted to transport you to Dawn Island. But I hijacked the door dimension to instead send you to me. The man turned, revealing half of his space to be cybernetic, with the other having human flesh. They call me Dr. Vegapunk. To this, Dr. Vegapunk opened his arms to reveal that they were no longer in the Blue Sea, nor in any part of the world, for Luffy was now standing on the moon. But you can call me Pluton, Moon. What the hell do you mean, Pluton? Luffy was confused, scratching his head from what this person was telling him. You know, Joy Boy. I mean, you are now known as Luffy. I owe you a great deal. Pluton, also known as Dr. Vegapunk, pulled a lever on his contraption, letting out a flow of liquid to his cup. He then drank from his cup and sat along a chair. He invited Luffy to join him, so he sat down on a strange metallic chair. So would you like me to tell you what's in Laugh-Tale? Hell no. Without skipping a beat, Luffy declined the information that this being was going to give him. I thought as much. Dr. Vegapunk chuckled. Your spirit reminds me of Roger, the one who found Laugh-Tale, learning the true history of the world. But alas, you do not want to hear it from me, which I will respect. What did you bring me to the moon for? Luffy asked, looking occasionally at his recovering staff known as Enma. You know, Luffy, I may not be able to tell you some things, but I can tell you a couple of things. Dr. Vegapunk revealed some world secrets, one only he knew. When my brother killed me, my soul traveled around the world trying to settle down, but it was not able to due to my brother's hold on the world. So my soul went to the moon, where I inhibited this body. I have since created a civilization on this moon, filled with automatons. Luffy did not understand why he was rambling about moon people. Alas, my loneliness caught up to me and I visited the blue sea under the guise of Dr. Vegapunk, blending into the world and awaiting your arrival. Though every time you are reborn, my brother kills you. Killed? What do you mean? Tisk tisk Luffy, you will know more at Laughtail. But anyway, this lifetime is the best chance we've ever had, thanks to the sacrifice of Lady Toki. Luffy, this is our chance to end my brother's tyrannical rule of the world. This is our chance to be the hero. Screw that, I don't want to be the hero. I want to be free, exclaimed Luffy, causing a smile to form in Dr. Vegapunk's face. Oh right, I forgot. I do apologize, Luffy. He smiled and continued on with his statement. Well, you see, back in my time in the Blue Sea, I have worked with countless brilliant minds, my creations of humans. They are fascinating, evolving creatures with tenacity rivaling even my own brothers. So in the Blue Sea I met a man named Bartolomeo Kuma and he asked for my help in making him into a cyborg. For you see, he was dying of a deadly disease, one similar to Roger's. In return for my services, I asked to clone the cybernetic Kuma, for I was working for the Marines as the head of the scientific division. I cloned him to make the Pacifista project with the help of a brilliant human named Sentomaru. He is the nephew of Admiral Kizaru, who graciously provided us with enough light particles to power the pacifistas. Though in truth, I have a fail-safe for these pacifistas. Alas, the century-old battle between yourself and Pluton will come to heads once more. So Luffy, once the battle begins, I hope you find yourself at ease that the pacifistas will no longer serve the world government, but instead be on your side. Sorbet Kingdom, South Blue. Kuma did as his mother asked, embracing her in their apparent final moment. Although the beam which was expected from the Pluton ship never arrived, Kuma looked around in confusion and found himself to be safe. Then the door to the bedroom swung wide open to reveal a young woman, one by the name of Jewelry Bonnie, or how he knew her as his little sister. Mother, brother, I'm glad we made it on time. Bonnie approached the two and embraced them, sighing deeply in relief. Bonnie, how? Kuma asked, confused at the situation. Outside he could hear machine grinding and the horrible metallic screech in the air. I came here per orders of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. We learned of the Pluton attacks. Outside, more noises ensued where metal continued to grind with metal, until finally the noise had stopped. Sister, what is going on outside? Then suddenly, Kuma's question was answered as Douglas Bullet casually floated down with a metallic sphere in his hands, bouncing it up and down as if it was a toy. Kuma then went to the window, opening it. Bonnie tended to his mother as the two powerful figures spoke with one another. Bullet greeted Kuma, although they had history with one another, now was not the time to show his disdain. Kuma. Right back at him. Then Kuma's eyes darted to the hands of Bullet, then back at him. Is that? Yup. Replied Bullet with a smirk. The other two members of his group, Dr. Hogback and Kabaji. Kuma could not believe it. Bullet destroyed the massive ship and compacted it into a tiny metal ball. Please file into single lines. We're here to help you all. Kabaji was organizing the relief while Dr. Hogback treated the patients. Make it quick. I have a feeling that Captain needs us back, Bullet said, then looked at Kuma. I trust that we can get the support of the Sorbet Kingdom? Of course, answered the Queen, the mother of Kuma and Bonnie. She did not know what happened, but if her Bonnie is with these people, then they have their full support. Moon, though my influence is not limited to saving Kuma's life. Luffy was getting tired of the explanation. He wanted to go back to the Blue Sea, but this guy was still telling his story. I also benefited the advancement in genetics with a man named Vinsmoke Judge. Though that idiot decided to use this discovery in modification instead of amplifying the way of life for people. Oh yeah, that idiot parent of Sanji, right? Replied Luffy as he casually laid back. By the way, why are you stalling? To this Pluton tensed up. He was hiding something after all. Germa Kingdom, North Blue. I didn't need your stupid help, you traitors. Judge crossed his arms at the arrival of his two children. Judge could only watch in awe as his supposed greatest failure was the strongest of his children. For Sanji kicked his way through the belly of the massive floating fortress and destroyed it from within. Something that his three other boys could not do combined. The Pluton ship crashed into the ocean and sank to the depths of the sea. Though he wasn't alone in this amazing feat, as he was joined by the giant Dory and the swordsman Charlotte Noisette. Somehow, someway, Sanji, his failure, had made something of himself. Whatever, Judge, we didn't come for you. We came for the people. Sanji had a cigar in his mouth, as he and his group just finished destroying the Pluton ship that was sent to the Germa kingdom. Half of the fortress was destroyed by Pluton, though Sanji and Co arrived on time. I told you, brother, he would not appreciate us. Reiju accompanied her brother on this mission to their birth land. She still cared for her family, though reluctantly. For the people, sis, for the people. Noisette sat on the shoulder of Dory as the people of Germa began to help one another. This is the power of humans, gentle giant, Noisette said as he stood up and observed the people. Amazing how they come together during distress, replied Dory with a smile. Moon, Luffy, in order for the stars to align, I need to keep you here on the moon. Dr. Vegapunk responded as his automaton began to surround Luffy. Vegapunk. Luffy was becoming enraged. What the hell was going on? Calm down, Luffy. I need you here while my brother moves towards the last island, Laughtail. Once his forces are there, I will get you back to your friends so you can then make your way there. I am merely an ally trying to align the stars. Vegapunk, if you had been watching me as closely as you say you have, I do not like these rules. Luffy sensed the genuine care that Vegapunk was giving out, it was just he did not like to be controlled. Now Luffy, no sudden movements. Don't be like Caesar, he sure knew how to pique my interest back in the Blue Sea. Kano Kingdom. West Blue Sai found that the end of his life was swiftly approaching, though it never came. With the death of his grandfather came hope. Hope Tra had Grand Armada. What the? Sai asked in confusion. Many years ago the Kano Kingdom was invited to join the Grand Armada, though they simply declined the laughable invitation. But now they were there. We are the Straw Hats, and we are here to help. Caesar extended a hand for Sai to get up as the other three members of the group were making quick work of the Pluton ship. Burndy, the group leader, launched giant rocks as the Pluton ship. He enlarged and accelerated their launch, causing massive damages to the ship. The other two members of the group were Cavendish and Hawkins, both of which rode the massive rock projectile to get aboard the ship and destroy it from within. The pacifistas stood no chance as Cavendish cut through them on his way to the main control while Hawkins destroyed them with his straw creature. In the end, the massive ship began its descent, only for Caesar to catch it in a cloud of smoke and bring the ship to the water, away from the city. Meanwhile Sai could only watch as his country was saved by the Straw Hat Grand Armada. Thank you. He still grieved over the death of his grandfather, but he was happy that his country survived. All in a day's work, Burndy said with a smile. I, along with my country, owe a great debt to the Straw Hats. I failed to lend my strength when I was asked to join the Armada, but let me redeem myself and join your cause now. Sure, Sai, the Kano Navy will be a great addition to the Straw Hats, replied Burndy World. Moon, Gum Gum Bazooka. Luffy cleared a group of automata, as he slowly made his way to Enma. Luffy, think with a clear head here, if you go back too soon then you will lose. I guarantee it. Vegapunk was floating along with his levitating chair. He let his mechanic creation do the work, while Luffy fought them off. He created devil fruits after all. Shut up, you damn puppeteer. This opposition was commendable, this was truly the chosen one. While Luffy was working hard on returning to the Blue Seas, his friends were also working hard on destroying the Pluton ships that were meant to cleanse the world. Unfortunately for it was not going to work. Kokoyashi Village. Great work, Oimo. Kashi. Nami stood atop of Zeus as Brook floated by her. The Pluton ship was destroyed by their combined power. Nami and Brook joined Genzo, Belmir, and Najiko. My, how my little sister has grown. Najiko crossed her arms at the arrival of Nami. Hi sis, mom. Nami embraced both Najiko and Belmir. Hello little one. So it's time, huh? Nami was surprised at how observant her mother was. Yes, we have found the map to Raftel. The thing is the world government does not want us to reach it. I know, so listen little one, I will meet you there, but I have to meet up with some people. Belmir reassured her daughter. Be careful daughter. Be careful sister. Same to you. With that the family embraced. You sure that was it? You haven't seen your family in a long time, Brooke asked. We'll celebrate after we win. Nami smiled as Oimo and Kashi went through the mirror portal first, then Nami followed after and finally Brooke. Syrup Village. Easy enough. Usopp crouched on top of the fallen Pluton ship, using his goggles to locate any parts that he could use. Excellent work Usopp. Clever use of the pop green. Kuro adjusted his glasses with the palm of his hands as Mihawk casually walked through the mirror portal. It took him 3 swings to cut the massive ship into 3 parts. Not a problem. Alright, well we have to return. Seems like we arrived before this Pluton could do any damage, Kaya said. Right behind you babe. Usopp picked a part and ran after Kaya. Young love. Kuro rolled his eyes but followed directly after. Skypie Enel, Gedatsu, Yoroge, Shira. Heaven's judgment. Enel delivered a massive bolt of lightning that fried everything within the ship, along with its content. Gedatsu, Yoroge and Shira could only look on with awe. Hey, imagine if he used that against us, Uruoge said as he swallowed his spit. Glad he's on our side, Shira replied with Gedatsu nodding his head. See, easy. Enel walked away from his work, with Uruoge punching the falling ship and redirecting its fall to the sea below. Glad he's on our side, Gedatsu said this time amazed at what Uruoge just did. Yup, replied Shira. Drum Island Chopper, Virgo, Moria, Killer. We're done here, Chopper said over a communicator snail. It's been easier ever since we had to deal with that damn Pluton ship with Whitebeard's Island, Virgo said. Yes, thanks to our research department for breaking down the weakness of this ship, Killer added. Good work everyone, Moria said, to which Chopper scratched his head. You basically stabbed the whole ship to its place with your shadow. We just got on board and deactivated it, Chopper said. It was a team effort still, replied Moria, who was very proud of his group. Alabasta, getting tired of these damn ships. Shiki sent the Pluton ship into space, then rapidly bringing it down back to the blue sea. Before it could even touch the ground, the atmospheric pressure was enough to disintegrate the ship. Father, are you alright? Vivi went to King Cobra, who was accompanied by Pell. I'm alright. What is happening right now? King Cobra asked, his age getting to him. We are at war father, we are at war with the world government. Baby 5 and Izo stayed close, guarding the princess. They were not needed for fighting the Pluton ship. About time, replied King Cobra with a smile. Arm our army. We are joining the war against the world government, replied the king of Alabasta, the only country that opposed the world government from its creation. His ancestor was responsible for assisting Pluton in having a fighting chance, and now it was his call to fight once more. Dressrosa Oven and his group arrived at Dressrosa to find that they were not really needed, for the strength of the Dressrosa army was very strong. At the helm of the army was Pika and Kairos, so they did not really need the help. So it's a call to arms brother. Viola spoke with Kairos, her brother-in-law. It was time for Dressrosa to join the fold. I think I speak for the king, Dressrosa will fight for this war. Kairos looked up at where the Pluton once floated. If the world government wants a cleanse so bad, then we cleanse them. Right you are. Oven agreed with a smile. Guild nodded his head in agreement. Sabaody Archipelago Rayleigh and Shaki demolished the bastardized Pluton, not even letting it come close to the island they have called home. My, you feel it don't you dear? Rayleigh said with a smile. Yes dear. Shaki responded. The end was near, Elbaf. My brothers. Rise up for our calling has arrived. Here I have the great Bragi, who once led the great giant pirates into prominence. Haruden was addressing the crowd. Behind the 4 giants of the Straw Hat. Behind the grand celebration was the fallen figure of Loki, the former ruler of Elbaf. The tyrannic rule of Loki ended with a single swing of his sword. Loki keeled over. His confidence and belief that he was superior disappeared with a single blow. The citizens of Elbaf were no longer going to be isolated. They needed to rejoin the world or else, they would die at the hands of the world government. We follow you, Haruden, for your return signals the revolution of the giant race. The elder of the giants spoke up, thus uniting the giant under the leadership of Haruden. Haruden, exclaimed the giants, hundreds of them joining him. But in spite of the insistence of the elders for a party, they had no time for that, for the mirror portal opened, and they needed to be with their captain. The new addition to the giant pirates would aid greatly in the coming war. And at the helm of this newly revived crew was Haruden, who was completely loyal to one Straw Hat Luffy. Unfortunately for the Straw Hats, they could not reach all the islands of the world. And thus many people were wiped out as intended, with the massive Pluton ship destroyed's power beam. The pacifistas killed as intended, and without Vegapunk's override, they were still under the control of the world government. The smell of death covered the air. Blood, gore, carnage. This was not how it was supposed to be. And yet in this world, where the opposing force is a literal god, you can only do so much. Islands in the Four Blues were wiped from the planet, its citizens erased from history. If I am wanted a cleanse, a fresh new world in his liking, he got it. But not with a stain on his perfect world. For the Straw Hat Grand Armada were alive. Moon, fuck your faith. Luffy swiped Enma from the healing table, feeling that he was now back to 100%. He had to thank Vegapunk for that, but he had somewhere to be. He needed to return to his friend. So upon calling forth his staff, Luffy expanded Enma and used his superhuman strength to swipe at the automata, knocking them off the moon. Then, like the rash thinker that her was well known to be, Luffy knocked himself off the surface of the moon and launched himself to the blue planet, where he accelerated his descent with the help of Enma's force against the moon. As Luffy made his way out of the moon's gravitational pull, he flipped off Dr. Vegapunk. He kept this form until he neared the blue planet's atmosphere, where he finally turned around to enter the atmosphere. He was then surrounded by flame and began his rapid descent through the world to his destination, Dawn Island. And how did he know to get there? Luck, of course. Luffy, you dumbass. I didn't get to tell you about. Aw, never mind. Dr. Vegapunk brought out a gun on his right holster. He then pointed it at an empty space and a portal opened up. Time to return to the blue planet and kill Uranus. And Dr. Vegapunk stepped into the portal, teleporting himself back to the blue planet, arriving to where his friend, Tom, resided. Hello, Tom. And of course, as we all know, Tom currently sat at the helm of the massive ship, the true form of Pluton. Hey Dr. Vegapunk, surprising of you dropping by like this. Their destination, the Red Line. Dawn Island, their victory was swift, but they knew what they needed to do. As Brûlé lets the last person to pass through the portal, the final army of the Straw Hat have finally assembled. All they waited for was their fearless captain. And looks like they did not have to wait for long as Luffy came crashing down from the heavens, landing on his feet. His rapid descent caused the entire group of people within the island to marvel at their captain. And to those who haven't met him, they know of him now, and respect him from word of mouth alone. He then observed the army before him, all of which was waiting for his command. Luffy looked around, first at Robin, who nodded her head, revealing the map to the final island of the world. I have pieced together the road to Laugh-Tale, Captain, said Robin. Then Nami embraced him for a moment. I will ensure that our journey there will be favorable weather, I guarantee it, added Nami. Jinbei had arrived from his journey to Atlantis, now bringing back the entire force of the Fishman people. Arlong convinced the citizens that now was the time to fight. We brought some extra muscle, Captain. Ready any time, Captain. Brook responded as Luffy walked past him to take his place at the helm of the assembly. Nobody will go hungry, Captain, Sanji added as he stood beside Frankie. Tom is bringing the big guns to destroy the Red Line, Captain. Medicine is all supplied. Chopper saluted as Luffy passed him in his hybrid form. Anywhere, Captain, I'll hit them, added Usopp with a smirk on his face. Name him Captain and he's dead. Zoro sat polishing his blade. Then Luffy finally arrived in the front of the group. It was there he stood and looked over the people around him. All followed him, all trusted him with their lives. My dear comrades. Luffy dusted off the atmospheric dust around him, tucking his long staff on his back as Enma needed a little more rest before the final battle. It is time to fight. Prepare the ships, our provision, your spirit. For this is the last leg of the race. He then observed the group before him, to Laughtail. Katakuri smiled and nodded his head. Mihawk crossed his arms. Hancock nodded her head at the inspiration that was her cane. Lucci smirked and Arlong began to jump around in joy. Through the help of Lady Toki, Luffy was able to gather these strong people. Giants of Elbaf led by Haruden. Atlantis with the power of Poseidon herself, Shirahoshi. Tom rides the real Pluton with Dr. Vegapunk to destroy the real Red Line. Dressrosa lends their army, Alabasta as well. Luffy expects X-Drake to bring in the Marine members under Sword. He knew of Kuzan's involvement, though who else was on there? He had employed the help of Hancock, Crocodile, Kuma, Jinbei, Mihawk, Law, Buggy, Moria, all of which are members of the former warlord in his original timeline. He employs the red-haired pirates led by the Emperor Shanks. He gathered the members of the former Big Mom pirates, with Katakuri and the siblings in tow. Then the Beast pirates are with him, Kaido serving completely under him. His original crew have all become powerful in their own right. Zoro had unlocked the true form of Ashura. Nami has the power of the soul fruit. Sanji is stronger than ever. Usopp was no longer the coward he once was and was completely confident in his own abilities. Robin was strong, Chopper was intelligent, Frankie was creative, Brook was soulful, and Jinbei was motivated. Yeah! A collective scream of approval echoed throughout Dawn Island. From all walks of life they all followed him, from different factions they fell for him. They were the Straw Hat Grand Armada, and they were ready for war. Laughtail. Before an all-out war could take place, Luffy needed to know the true content of Laughtail, the true story of One Piece, and its significance to his ascendance. The entire Grand Armada moved with haste, but they stopped a couple miles from the Promised Land. They knew what was ahead of them, the entire forces of the Marines and world government. Thanks to Robin's understanding of the poneglyphs, the Straw Hats were able to locate the final island. Finally, after all these years, the One Piece was finally available for the taking. But they would have to go through the world government and the Marines, for they have surrounded the island of Laughtail. They always had the ability to get to the final island. They just forbid access to the final island for obvious reasons. Safe journeys, Captain. To see him off, Katakuri stood at the edge of the ship, beside him Hancock and Mihawk. We won't engage as per your orders, Mihawk said. Be careful out there. Hancock embraced her love, while Yamato approached the group. Tell me what the true history is, I must know. With that Luffy went ahead, jumping down to the small boat below. Corazon, Pudding, and Lucci with me. The trio followed their captain and jumped below the Thousand Sunny and into the small Dingy below. Aboard the Thousand Sunny, the strongest members of the Grand Fleet were currently gathered. Zoro, Sanji, Nami, Robin, Brook, Chopper, Jinbei, Usopp. Katakuri, Mihawk, Hancock, Kurokodi, Enel Whitebeard, Marco, Jozu. Oven, Smoothie, Cracker. Kaido, Yamato, King, Queen. Shanks, Ben Beckman, Usopp. Ace, Sabo. The 9 red scabbards of Lord Odin. The worst generation. Kazuki Momonosuke, age 28, Kazuki Hiyori. Poseidon, Shirahoshi, Pluton, Dr. Vegapunk. So at the guise of the night, Luffy and a select group of 3 people went to the final island. Hiding in plain sight, moving as a unit. In his party were people important for the covert mission to succeed. Corazon to cover their noise, Pudding for memory manipulation for any personnel that they meet, and Lucci for assassination if necessary. Luffy stood on the helm of the tiny Dingy. Corazon slouched over the back of the ship while Lucci looked ahead in a similar manner as Luffy. Pudding was taking a nap with a blanket over her. Their journey was quiet, too quiet. This was good, of course. Lucci tapped Corazon and he immediately knew what to do, surrounding them with his ability to keep their conversation muted. Captain, incoming message from Tom. Lucci then turned to Luffy. Patch him through. Luffy continued to look onward. Static over the sound echoed throughout the small boat, but again, no sound could escape the soundproof room created by Corazon. Hello, Captain. Tom began on the other side of the call. Go ahead, Tom. Alright, Captain. The Pluton ship is above the red line where the Holy Land sits, and the old Fishman Island is below. "We are ready to destroy the thing down with this ship," Tom stated. "Who's we?" asked Luffy. "Hello Luffy, it is I Dr. Vegapunk." With that, Luffy passed the call to Lucci and began to shake his head. "I will give you my aid in this war." "Thanks," Lucci answered for the captain. "Wait for his orders." "Of course," Tom replied and dropped the call. "We are approaching the land, Captain." Over in the distance, Corazon called the island. Its shape was so simple, a tropical paradise with no outstanding features. Luffy looked onward. A bunch of fruit trees surrounded the island. But before making it to the island, a massive marine battleship was heading straight for them. Luffy thought that it was time to fight, but the ship came to a sudden halt. Then from the front of the ship, Kuzan emerged, jumping down into their tiny dinghy. "What do you want?" Luffy's voice was venomous. After all, his grandfather was dead cause Kuzan could not reveal his true allegiance. Kuzan had the power of ice, but he could feel chills run over his back as Luffy's voice was so deadly. "To begin, I sincerely apologize for your grandfather. He was a noble and just man. He would not let me reveal my standing with the world government in fear that all the years of our hard work would crumble." "Shut up Kuzan, I don't want your sentiment. Again I ask." This time Lucci, Pudding, and Corazon watched the ice user carefully, sizing him up if he was going to do anything. "Once again, what do you want?" "Just wanted to let you know that all of Sword are present, and will flip on the world government as soon as the battle begins. And your journey to the final island is secure, as I am put in the head of watching the island. There are some ground troops patrolling it, but nothing your people can't handle." "Very well Kuzan." Luffy dismissed the Marine Admiral, leader of Sword. Kuzan nodded his head once, then jumped back on his giant battleship, turning to the opposite direction to avoid Luffy's small dinghy. To the final island they went. Arriving on the final island, Luffy immediately jumped away from the ship, true to his words. There were about 100 Marines scattered on the island, protecting the promised One Piece from anyone who wanted the prized treasure of the late Pirate King. They were silent in their approach, stealthy as they assassinated any Marines who stood on their way. Pudding appeared behind a Marine and pulled his memory from his head. It revealed their mission: to protect the One Piece, even if it cost them their life. Their dedication was for naught as Luffy and the group went through the Marines like they were nothing. Corazon silenced anyone who tried to call for backup. Luffy knew where to go. Somehow, someway, he felt like he needed to go to the center of the island. On his left, Lucci just chopped the neck of a Marine captain, effectively knocking him out. On his right, Pudding just made a Marine officer drool as his memory was wiped until he was a baby. She did not feel bad for doing this as the man's only purpose was to serve the world government, no matter what. Meanwhile Corazon hovered, jumping from tree to get a vantage point and silence any noise that could possibly escape. That was it. There was no stopping him from reaching the final treasure. It was the Pirate King's inheritance. What was it? Luffy and company stopped at a massive entranceway, one that was well hidden by the heavy vegetation of the tropical island. "Wait here." Luffy was going to learn of the true history, and he needed time to observe everything. Luffy opened the massive cavern blockade with one arm, showing his immense strength. He then entered the darkness, leaving his group behind. Upon entry, he could feel that there was a lone presence within the confines, one that transcends the normal aura of a human being. It was as if a spirit was present. Despite not being able to see in the darkness, he was able to follow the spirit. Until finally, his long journey led him to what he could only assume was the heart of the island, where within the heavy guise of darkness, a small flicker of light could be seen in the bottom of the massive room. It was where the spirit resided as well. So Luffy followed the small light, and as he got close, he found that it was nothing more than a stone. A small beautiful rock that emitted a small flicker of light. His instincts told him to grab the stone, and grab it. Then what happened next was unexpected, for around the dark cavern, something forced the lights to open from all around the cavern. Its size was definitely larger than he could see, for the room he was in must have been below the island of Laugh-Tale. And true to his promise, Gold D. Roger left a massive amount of treasure within the hollow cavern. It was a room filled with treasure, enough to last someone for eternity. Though treasure was not what Luffy was interested in, for Luffy continued to look at the small glowing rock, ignoring the treasure around him. "Reveal yourself," he called. Suddenly the rock began to shake violently and emitted a glowing white light from itself. "I thought you would be as you are." There was no doubt of, "Hello Luffy. Looks like you found the One Piece." "Attaboy." The spirit of Gold D. Roger emerged from the stone and walked towards Luffy, as if it was a real entity. "You are the former Pirate King." Luffy knew this by his wanted poster, complete with his red trench coat and epic mustache. A man exemplified power with his mere presence alone. "And you are my successor. Congratulations Luffy. So this rock is the One Piece. A bit anticlimactic, but there's got to be more." "No Luffy, it's the key to the truth. By this I mean that the One Piece is truly an endless amount of treasure that currently surrounds you. But what good is treasure if there is one being who rules the world? You are talking about the bastard that killed my grandfather." Luffy's hands tightened around the glowing rock, though despite his anger, he could not break the stone. "Yes. The same bastard that cleansed the world of his existence during the Void Century." Roger began to walk, to where Luffy did not know, but he followed him. "Luffy, did you know that I laughed when I discovered this island?" "Why is that?" Luffy asked as they walked side by side. Then Roger pointed at the hat over his head. "My straw hat." The Holy Land Mary Gaius, a massive, truly terrifying unidentified floating object resided above the Holy Land. Its citizens pointed up, confused at what was happening before them. The celestial dragons were elevated for having familial ties with the 19 families which supported Uranus. Above the battleship, Tom and Dr. Vegapunk currently looked down on the celestial dragon. "My, how times have changed." Among the scientist, demigod and the carpenter were 2 members of the Straw Hat Grand Armada. The 2 members that wanted to stay away from Laughtail as they knew what was in store. Plus they knew they needed to see through it that the Pluton machine actually did its job. My, it will be pleasant to finally stick it to these celestial dragons." Rayleigh was the first to volunteer to go with Pluton. "After needing to be quiet in Sabaody, this will be nice," Shaki replied. The former first mate of Roger's pirate and the former member of the Rock's pirate shared a kiss before jumping below. They both declined going to the final island. Dr. Vegapunk followed straight after and the trio wreaked havoc on the Holy Land. The streets of the once heavenly environment were covered in royal blood. For the people of the world. The slaves of the former celestial dragon rose up along with the aggressor. The guards of the Holy Land were no match for the uprising. While all this was going on, Dr. Vegapunk did not fight unless he needed to. For he was in the Holy Land for one reason, and it was located in the dungeons. Dr. Vegapunk knew his way around the Holy Land, for he lived there once. It had not changed in centuries. He made his way to his brother's room, where the Tree of the Devil was located. He observed his creation, angered by the work of his brother. But alas, he must move on, for the Tree of the Devil will go soon enough. He needed to go deeper, deep into the dungeon where the treasure was. He then finally arrived in the frozen dungeon of the Holy Land. Before him was a giant straw hat, one that was dubbed as the national treasure. "Why is that? Your secret is no longer safe, brother." With that, Dr. Vegapunk gathered his fist, infused it with his will and punched straight through the massive straw hat. It was fake, for the real key was where it needed to be, with Straw Hat Luffy. Laughtail One Piece. Your hat is the key to the true history of the Void Century. Roger guided Luffy's eyes to a stone structure that has an etching where his hat fits perfectly. You see, despite his godly powers, Uranus loved his Joy unconditionally, but Joy did not return his creator's paternal love. For Joy knew that it was right to oppose his sadistic creator. For Uranus wanted to keep a record of all his misdeeds, extracting his memory of the events and placing it in one place. And so here we are. Luffy followed behind Roger as he explained what he needed to. He went over the true history of Uranus, Pluto, and Poseidon. At the beginning of time, there was Uranus, the creator of all things, the ruler of the sky. Uranus grew bored of his solitude and decided to create his siblings, Poseidon, who was his sea-loving sister. Then there was Pluton, his earthbound brother, whose obsession with creating new things jump-started the creation of humankind. 20 pairs of men and women were created by Pluton to satiate his hunger for discovery. Though Uranus, who believed his superiority complex far surpassed that of his creation, decided to hunt down Pluton for creating such disgusting creatures. Uranus created 7 stars from his vision, and these stars were used as a weapon in the war against his own brother. Pluton caught wind of this and decided to instill a secret tree filled with wondrous powers, a gift to the mortals to give them an edge against Uranus and his 7 stars. Now where was Poseidon in all this? She wants no part of such conflict. Thus the fruit of the devil shall never enter the domain of the sea monarch. The 20 kings promised to help Pluton in the war against Uranus consuming the fruit of the devil, but then 19 out of the 20 kings were secretly working with Uranus behind their creator's back. Only one king remained loyal to Pluton, and thus on his deathbed, before Uranus slayed him, Pluton gave the loyal king a weapon that could reach the skies and destroy his tyrannical brother, but the blueprint was instead hidden, for the king feared for the life of his family. Meanwhile, the 19 kings who helped Uranus in killing Pluton were raised within a red wall, near the heavens, close enough for Uranus to toy with their desire and greed. Though Uranus never expected his own creation, a boy, one of the star, his most precious joy, in order for Pluton to survive long enough to pass on his blueprint. Joy Boy held off Uranus long enough, but he too perished, living in his wake a dream that one day Uranus's tyrannical rule will be put to an end. It was enough to allow for his resurrection every 100 of years to attempt to kill his creator. What happened to Poseidon? Well, she continued to rule in her domain, passing her lineage to the first female-born mermaid of the royal family. She feared for her people, so she did not interfere with the war of her siblings. Chapter 46. Aso Shirahoshi is Poseidon. That old man Vegapunk on the moon is Pluton. And Uranus is the bastard that killed my grandfather. Luffy responded after Roger explained the beginning of time. Roger then guided Luffy to place his hat on the stone etching. Your hat once belonged to Joy Boy. And with Uranus' eternal love for his greatest creation, he made this straw hat the key to his own memories, thus giving the key to the true history. He thought he had the correct key under his castle, but alas, what he had was an imitation created by Joy Boy before he died, with the hat being transferred to the next inheritance of the will of Joy Boy. Roger then caught his spectral breath. I laughed because I left the straw hat with my sickly apprentice, Shanks. It was then that I laughed at the irony, as my death was coming near. Anyway, it is now your mission to unfold the truth. Go on then, lad. Though once you enter and learn of the Void Century, I won't be present for your journey. For my spirit can only go as far as this entranceway. After all, my spirit can only reach what the real body experienced. Sure, Roger, thank you for your help. With that, Luffy placed the hat into the etching and he was suddenly launched to an empty field. Luffy looked around and found that Roger was gone. Though he was not alone, for around him, the lone god of the world sat on his throne on his empty field. Void Century Uranus grew tired of the resistance of the humans. They did not want to be subdued. They rose up with the leadership of David. For David was the inheritor of the will of Joy Boy and he wielded the power of the sky. The straw hat wearing David Uranus wanted to happen, for the resilience of men outperformed his own ambition. So Uranus came to a conclusion that the only way to rule the world as he wanted was to erase everything in relation to David and his resistance. In order to do that, Uranus needed to burn everything down so he could reshape it into his image. On the morning of the first day of the onslaught, Uranus raised titanic monsters made from the earth to slay any who resisted his rule. The titanic golems killed everything in its path, without a care of the innocent and the guilty. David learned of the massacre and brought along a group of resistance forces, though Uranus was ready for them. David was brought to submission as his friends were beheaded before him. But his will was strong, and David said, "One day you will get what you deserve." And David was killed. Little did Uranus know, David was the inheritor of Joy Boy's will. Uranus did not know of this, but once he learned of his actions from his 6 stars, he grew into a depressive state, for his love for Joy was unconditional. After the death of David, Uranus is the key to his memories under the Holy Land, the Straw Hat, and then he went on a rampage, vowing to erase everything in existence, for he could only express his pain through violence. Though the resistance continued to hide from the power of Uranus, David's story began to evolve into something more, something that surpassed time itself. The will of Joy, which was the will of David, transcends time, eventually evolving into the will of D. The Kazuki family etched the true history into indestructible stones known as poneglyph, recounting the true events of the massacre. Throughout the centuries, the skill needed to read this ancient language disappeared, and the only people who could remained in hiding in fear of losing their lives. Finally, after 700 years of death, pain, and suffering, Uranus finally rid his world of the resistance against him. Not once did Joy Boy reincarnate in this time. At least he thought he did, as there are people who hid their intentions well. For Joy Boy had reincarnated into a little boy, who would later be known as the daimyo of Wano, protected by the sword god himself, Ryama. Yet in life, there is death, and so the daimyo passed, but so did his will. The will of D was passed on to the next inheritor or Joy's resistance. Then on to the next until it found someone who could resist the power of Uranus. Then the lineage of the will of David and Joy now rests on the hand of one Straw Hat Luffy. But Uranus, or now he is known as I Am, could not move against the will of David or risk exposing his deep secret. So instead, he worked in the shadow, and he lived that way ever since. He created the world government with his 6 stars as his puppets, acting as the head power of the organization to keep himself in control. Members of the Cypher Pole worked for him, killing any and all who could pose as a threat to him. The Marines were made to counter the age of piracy, but never could Uranus account for the rise of power of his Joy. How the will of D transcended time and was now passed on from Zebek to Roger and finally to Luffy. How the true key to his secret was not hidden in the Holy Land, but in the possession of the late Pirate King, his apprentice, and now his successor. Then there was nothing, for Luffy had learned so much in so little time. Yet the new king of pirate only became angry with the revelation. All the pain and suffering of people around the world only for one man to control the world. How selfish and sadistic. If anything, Luffy will only prove once again that humanity is resilient, no matter the circumstance. Luffy then turned from the memory, exiting the tunnel which he had entered and retrieving his straw hat. He made his way past the mountains of treasures, past the dimly lit cavern, and back out to the surface of the island, the trio waiting patiently for him. "I've learned all I needed to know," Luffy said, feeling the rock on his pocket. Not a single person asked what the One Piece was, for they knew they would know when the time comes. It was then that the Straw Hat Captain pulled a golden mini-snail, contacting the head of his armada. "Katakuri," he called. It took a few seconds for his right-hand man to respond. "Aye, Captain. Attack," was his simple command. "Aye, aye," Katakuri replied with excitement in his voice. The air was covered in silence, as Luffy and company waited for the signal. Suddenly the air was filled with alarm as the sound of gunfire and explosion covered the air. The once quiet dawn was filled with so much noise, it was deafening. Luffy then looked at Corazon, Lucci and Pudding. "Let's go." With the command of their commander, the Straw Hats in the island of Laugh Tale went forward, jumping the war-filled ocean of massive marine ships against pirate ships. Hundreds of devil fruit wielders battled against one another in a war of ideology. Luffy activated Gear 2, preparing to make one massive leap to the Thousand Sunny, which led the Grand Armada into battle. Though something flew through the island, its target obviously being Luffy. Though the attacker was intercepted by Lucci, whose speed was top-notched amongst the Grand Armada. "Take care of it, Lucci," Luffy said, knowing who it was that tried to assassinate him. He then embraced Pudding and Corazon and bound to his main ship. Behind him, Lucci was left behind with a blonde-haired assassin, leader of the Cypher Pole Aegis Zero, Stussy. "I've been looking for you." Lucci looked menacingly at the person who killed his parents. A village on fire. A man, possibly in his 30s, was running. From what he couldn't tell. In his arm was a child, no older than 8. His father stopped, holding the child up and holding his shoulders, violently shaking him to his senses. "Listen here, boy, she is dead. Your mother is dead, and it is because of my weakness." The child stopped crying, still not understanding the situation. "If you are not on top, then you are dead." And as the words escaped his mouth, a bullet went through his head, blood spewing all over the child. No tears escaped the child's eyes, as all he could do was freeze in shock. And before him, an uncanny figure with a strange-looking mask. The figure's left hand held a gun, its barrel still hot from the bullet which escaped it. The masked figure pointed its gun at the child's head to no reaction. Then as the masked figure was about to pull the trigger, the child disappeared in a blur, attempting to kill the figure which murdered his father in cold blood, but he was not able to reach him. It took another 2 masked figures to subdue the boy who was going berserk. The masked figure disappeared in the shadow, with the child's eyes never leaving the assailant for even a second. Chapter 10. "Who the fuck are you?" responded Stussy, a sadistic smile plastered across her otherwise beautiful face. "I'm the person that's going to kill you, aboard the Thousand Sunny." Luffy arrived at the mothership of the massive pirate fleet. Pudding and Corazon got oriented and made their way to their own group. He then addressed the people present. "My orders are simple." Luffy then got up, looking at the people before him. "Get me to I am, and we'll end this once and for all." Above him, Kaido in his dragon form circled around, roaring into the sky at the declaration of the newly crowned Pirate King. Luffy found the One Piece, and it was now time for the Pirate King to take the world by storm. It would not be easy, but he knew he could do it. For Luffy had his armada, his friends, his family. Meanwhile I Am had his puppets, his slaves, his blind followers. Love will triumph against tyranny. Always and forever.